29 kilometers to go to the summit of the Col de la Croix de Fer. 29 kilometers, 18 miles of climbing. It's going to take these guys around about an hour and 20, an hour and 25 minutes to get to the summit. There's the main field, still getting themselves organized, and they are 7 minutes and 17 seconds behind. Oh, in fact, we're just hearing there's one rider on his own right at the back end of the race, and that's poor old Jimmy Casper. He's 11 minutes behind the main field.
Well, we saw what Schumacher did last time yesterday, Paul. He wasted no time in pulling away from his breakaway compatriots. He might try the same stunt today. The average speed today, by the way, in miles per hour, 22, just over 33 kilometers an hour.
It really has been a very fast stage, and I suppose a lot of that you can attribute to the breakaway, but you can also attribute to the work done on the front of this main field by Team CSC, because they have led the front end of the peloton. They allowed the breakaway to go clear. They've got a job in hand this afternoon. They've got a strategy that they're thinking about. They want to toughen the race up, and they want to try and hit Denny Menchov and I think, of course, Cadel Evans. Cadel Evans, on the other hand, he can ride defensively this afternoon. He just needs to keep an eye on Frank Schleck. I think he needs to keep an eye on Denny Menchov, and then for the rest, I don't think he has to be really too concerned, because his time trialing ability is his strong point. This is Remy de Gregorio. He now also is about to take the left-hand turn and start the climb of the Col de la Croix de Fer.
The next 83 kilometers, I would suggest, are going to be the most important in the life of all four front men in the Tour de France, because they know if they can just hold on to their times and their gains, they can all come down to the penultimate day of the Tour. Big cheers from the partisan crowd here for Remy de Gregorio, and amazingly he lost his place with the leaders on the 11-kilometer descent of the Col du Telegraph. 7 minutes and 18 seconds is the gap. We're looking at 83 kilometers to go to the finish here. This rider is running about a minute plus now behind the four leaders, and he's not going to 2.5 minutes, the latest time check on him now for Remy de Gregorio, but the peloton at 7:18, so they're still 5 minutes behind him.
Well, there's the banner for him indicating 29 kilometers to go, and as you can see, it's 82 kilometers to go to the finish, and of which 43 kilometers are going to be uphill. 29 kilometers here, and then 14 kilometers up to the summit of the Alpe d'Huez. You might just notice in the background there, you might briefly have noticed in the background, not too far away from us, is the factory, the aluminium factory of Rio Tinto. And there you can see the three leaders. No move yet by Stefan Schumacher. Ruben Plaza, Phil, just sitting back there as well. You know, he's been a professional for 4 years. This is his 4th season as a pro, and he's never yet won a race. But he is a very accomplished climber.
And he is, and that's why he's there, of course, to help other riders on his team. But Euskaltel Euskadi played a few cards on this tour. Nothing has worked out for them, nothing at all. Yesterday, they had tried to get Samuel Sanchez to win the stage, and he got cramp, so he didn't win the stage. Sometimes things don't go your way. Back with the peloton, Stuart O'Grady's been on the front now virtually since we left the start at M. Brown this morning. Still the pacemaker. They dodged the bush there, and Stuart and Nicky Sorensen have done all of the initial work for Team CSC. They are the first two to be thrown away once this climb gets a bit tough.
Yes, and then the sad thing is they've got to try and survive. Just a quick calculation, Phil, of the 82 kilometers left to go to the finish for these guys, 43 are uphill.
Yeah, that's a horrible thought. I hope they haven't done that calculation, Paul.
Well, I hope they haven't, but they might have a quick idea, because when they go around this corner in a little while, they'll see the indication of 29 kilometers to go, and every bike rider, I think, in the world knows that the climb up to the Alpe d'Huez is 14 kilometers.
Just a reminder, the boys up front aren't endangering the race favourites, who are still in this big pack here. The best placed is Stefan Schumacher, 22 minutes and 5 seconds behind, exactly what he was yesterday, because the favourites caught him up on the run-in. And so he's still 22 minutes down after a long day in the lead yesterday, and it looks like another long day in the lead today. Just got a feeling it might be a tougher proposition to catch him. It depends how long they let him run before they start attacking one another. At the moment, this is just pacemaking by O'Grady and Sorensen. Nobody's attacking anybody.
Not yet. I think the foundations for the attack will be laid on the early kilometres of the Col de la Croix de Fer. And then the only way, I think, to put riders like Denny Menchov and Cadel Evans into difficulty is to change the pace at the front end of the race. There's another little crash here.
That is
Columbia rider.
It looks like George again, isn't it?
No, I think it's Bernard Eisel. It is Bernard Eisel.
Yeah. Well, that's the third or the fourth Team Columbia rider down today. There it is there.
Well, look at the guy on the left-hand side there. He was very alert. One guy jumped onto the pavement to the left, and the other guy saw this and went straight over the central reservation there.
Yeah, it is rather sadly that. It's rather sad when it happens with that centre reservation. Riders unsighted there. Bernard Eisel getting back underway. He's ripped his shorts in the same place. They're going to be running out of clothes, but they've got the right sponsor for that because they've lost a number of pairs of shorts and jerseys today. 7:20 the gap.
So, look at the front end of the main field now, and they're not too concerned about what's happened at the back end of the peloton. And they're going to start to get themselves ready now for this very nasty climb. They will shortly start that 29-kilometre ascent. It's a very difficult climb. The riders will face around about 8 kilometres at 9%, and 24 kilometres, 24 sections at 9%. Before they get up to the summit of this 29-kilometre climb. O'Grady still very happy to sit at the front end of the main field. O'Grady, sorry about the picture breakup. It's very difficult. These are digital signals that we're using nowadays, and the problem is with a digital signal, unlike the old analog, once it starts to break up, then it completely disappears and freezes. So there, down there, is the Église de Notre Dame, and this is Stuart O'Grady, still sitting on the front end of the main field and just about to start the massive big climb. O'Grady, wearing number 15 on his back, starts the Col de la Croix de Fer, 29 kilometres to the summit, and again still all the riders from Team CSC moving up to the front. There you can see the little red spot. That's where we're aiming for. That's in excess of 2,000 metres, and it's going to take them around about an hour and 25 minutes to get there. This is the back end of the main field, and a lot of the riders, the sprinters, the men from the flatlands will not be very happy about their position here and the fact that they've got to ride uphill for an hour and a half. Very polite crowd here at the side of the road. We've got to go over the third climb of the day. We had a small third category climb early on, then the 13-mile Col du Galibier, and now we're on the 18-mile climb of the Col de la Croix de Fer, and it's huge.
These are the three pacemakers. They got away after 3 kilometres. Schumacher joined Perez and Vellit a little bit later on, who was already up the road with Di Gregorio. There's Di Gregorio. He's been dropped now, and indicating he's nearly 3 minutes back of those three leaders. The bunch at 7:16.
Team manager there just telling him to keep drinking, keep making sure that the liquids are taken up. That team manager there, by the way, was Marshall Gaillon, himself a former yellow jersey wearer in the Tour de France. A little bit precarious going through town here, isn't it? That's the problem with coming through towns these days. There is so much traffic furniture and directional furniture on the roads, it makes it very difficult to take a bike race through, especially one as big as the Tour de France.
I was just seeing if we could see the shadow there of Bernard Eisel coming up through the cars. I didn't see him. Eisel, the sprinter, of course, you wouldn't expect to be in contact with the main field once we're on the climb of the Croix de Fer, at least not the leaders. There's Cancellara, Arvidsson. This is the heart of the peloton here. It's an awful long way to the front when you sit at the back, isn't it? It's just a massive bike riders and wheels.
No, it certainly is. A lot of riders, Phil, I think, will be waiting to try and see whether or not they can form themselves into an autobus, as this man, Stefan Schumacher, is in difficulty.
It's a bit early.
It's very early, but there is one man behind him, because I heard that Jimmy Casper, who got dropped on the Col du Galibier, is 11 minutes behind the main field. Now, he will be on the edge of elimination tonight, Phil, if he doesn't do something special over this climb. And when you've lost time on the first climb of the day, it's not a good omen.
No, the chances are you won't make it. 11 minutes before the Croix de Fer and before Alpe d'Huez. They'll be unlikely to beat the time limit today. We don't know the time limit until we know the average speed of the race based on the winner's time. Then it is a percentage of that. So we'd have to work it out once the winner arrives.
Slipping back as well there, Sebastian Langeveld. A little bit of urgency you can see in the main field. They know that they're about to get themselves set up for about an hour and 20 minutes of climbing. That's to put it into perspective. It's an awful long time to go uphill. The green jersey of Oscar Freire looks pretty comfortable at the front end of the main field. He will ride with the front end of the group, Phil, for as long as possible until it starts to get just that little bit too painful, and then he'll sit up and find himself a good, comfortable group.
Freddy Bichot, 122, coming off the back already. They're not making any serious efforts here to try and hold on. They know the length of this hill. It has a bad reputation at Croix de Fer. If you're a strong man, you'll love the next few kilometers. If you're not a good climber, you're just going to suffer.
It's a horrible climb, this as well. It's one of the most difficult climbs, especially after what you've been over already. And look at O'Grady, still banging away at the front, trying to make it tough for everybody else here in the bike race. And he knows that once he starts to crack, and he doesn't look like a man ready to crack to me, Phil,
amazing.
His teammate Nicky Sorensen will take over.
He's got rid of Thor Hushovd, Paul.
He's been on the front since we started the Col de Loteret, and he's now damning his former teammate Thor Hushovd to ride off the back end of the group.
Number 66, Alexander Kuzinski, at one stage was the Lanterne Rouge of the race. He isn't at the moment. 134 is Sebastian Langeveld. Good rider of the future, but early days in the Tour de France career for him. So they're already unhitching at the back there, as you can see. They're going on to the climb 7 minutes behind the leaders, and Di Gregorio's now back over 3 minutes behind those leaders. This is incredible pace-making by Stuart O'Grady. His object here is to reduce this down to the race leaders, and then it's down to them to fight out the result of the Tour de France.
Yeah, that's what O'Grady's looking at. There's just 3 leaders left now from an original group of 4 riders off the front end of the main field. Schumacher, Perez, and the man just sitting on the back there, Peter Velets, the youngest man in the breakaway at just 24. 3 minutes. This man, Remy de Gregorio, was looking for glory for France here this afternoon, Phil. And strangely enough, he lost it on the downhill part of the course.
Yes, that was a shame, but he's in no man's land. He's hoping to get over the top ahead of the peloton, though.
In the back there on the far side of the big mountain, you can see there is a very famous mountain itself in the Tour de France. That is the Col de la Madeleine. And if you climb over the Col de la Madeleine, in fact, you would be not too far away from finding Cuneo, where we were a little while back. Moving forward here, you can, that's Konstantin Sitsov. He did a good ride yesterday for Team Discovery, but this man, I think, is the man of the match for me, Stewie O'Grady.
Yeah. This is Wim van Sevenant. He's cracking now at the back end of the field. Stefan de Jong, as we move steadily through, this peloton is going to reduce in size the next 5 kilometers like you won't believe. 157 is Nicky Terpstra.
He's slipping back.
And he's got a Chipotle boy in trouble there too. That was Martin Maskant, yeah. Yep. He's the young Dutchman. What a great future he has.
Oh, well, certainly. I mean, 4th in Paris-Roubaix this year. We'd hardly ever mentioned his name before. Then he gets into the winning breakaway and hangs on to get himself 4th place. You can see that Oscar Freire is riding very comfortably there, Phil, in the green jersey alongside the yellow jersey of Frank Schleck. But I still feel I'm not quite okay with the tactics of Team CSC for the moment. Stuart O'Grady just swinging off, I think, his job done for the day. I do believe if CSC really think that they can win the Tour de France, the overall bike race this afternoon, Phil, they need to attack. They need to start making it very difficult and not riding this steady pace. Normally, this steady pace, I think, is to the advantage of Denny Menchoff and to Cadel Evans. I
couldn't agree more. They've really got to start lifting it. Here's Simon Gerrans dropping off. I'm not so sure he is dropping off as looking for a team car, because he was the winner at Prado Nervoso in Italy when it took us to the eve of our 2nd rest day. Looking pretty cool. I don't think he was in trouble, actually. His teammate here, Jimmy Ongouvant.
I'm not sure what Simon was doing there. There's a lot of riders now, Phil, starting to disappear. David Lelay.
Paul's teammate's son, David Lelay there. And Danny Pate. No, sorry, I misread the number. Will Fishcorn here.
Yeah. It's a question of survival now, Phil. I think everybody knows the reputation of this climb that we're about to go in. Vicente Garcia Acosta.
I'm surprised he's going this early. He's not a great climber. He's gone a bit early.
Well, I think everybody's just trying to get themselves into a fairly decent rhythm now. Another man disappearing there is the big sprinter, Robert Forster of Gerolsteiner.
Yeah, stage winning the Tour de France in the past.
O'Grady.
There's goodbye to Stewie. What a brilliant job he's done for his team. Now it's time. Yes, indeed, Stewie. Make sure you get in the right group and make sure we see you at Alpe d'Huez inside the time limit. That's all that matters right now.
Slipping back now, this is Samir Dumoulin, the winner of the stage into Nantes. It seems like a long time ago, 2 weeks ago in fact. That was stage 3 of the Tour de France as the Tour de France made ready to leave Brittany. And he's covered up as well. He must have been involved in an accident as well. This is Juan Antonio Fletcher. He was in the breakaway yesterday, a group of 24 riders who were caught in between the leading group of 5 and then in front of the main field. But he did that to try and help his team leader, Deni Menchov. Just looking back, there's a lot more riders disappearing. This is Jérémy Roy, the French rider on the Française des Jeux. This is really a question of elimination by the rear end of the main field as we start to make our way up to the summit of the next high spot of the day, which is going to be the Col de la Croix de Fer, the Cross of Iron. It's now Fabian Cancellara. Look at that backdrop in the rear of the picture there. It really is magnificent. That climb as well, the Col de la Madeleine, itself in excess of 2,000 meters.
Well, what with the leaders here, Paul? 6 minutes 40, so the tempo behind, which is now Fabian Cancellara, is starting to eat into these boys.
Well, it certainly is. They're really starting to rough it up. I'm impressed with Peter Velits here, Phil. 24 years of age, under 23 champion of the world last year. He can't wear that title with the professionals because that title belongs to Paolo Bettini. We can see here, this man here at the back, Schumacher, keeping himself cooled down with plenty of water and also trying to keep himself fairly hydrated. And there is an Elvis. He's come back.
Elvis Presley cheers on the leaders as they go on the Croix de Fer. And those 3 leaders continue as we look through the dazzling wheels here, and we come up on the face of the world time trial champion now. We've got rid of, and I say that with affection, we've got rid of Stuart O'Grady after a brilliant half day in the saddle. Now is the turn of the next echelon of CSC. But I agree with Paul Sherwin. This tempo riding is not going to kill off Deni Menchov and Cadel Evans. They've got to attack him.
Well, that's the only thing that I think Cadel Evans and Deni Menchov do not appreciate. It's the changes in speed on the slopes of a mountain. Now, it looks as if this constant riding on the front has also been a little bit too much for Nicky Sorensen, because he now is disappearing from the fold.
His job done, yes, bye-bye. We've done our bit today. He'll join Stuart O'Grady and they'll help each other get home. Dropping off there, one of Evans' strong teammates, Leif Hoster's gone. Julian Dean, champion of New Zealand, just fading out of our picture. Number 44 there is Gerald Cholik. He's a sprinter. 58, another sprinter in Robbie Hunter. All time to reassess their worth here. One of the crash victims of the day, Adam Hansen of Australia, also dropping back.
Philippe Gilbert on the right side there in the white jersey. This is starting to see, Phil, the formation of the Gruppetto. That's Fredrik Willems of Team Liquigas. These guys have said, no, thank you very much. That's plenty of pain for us this afternoon. We'll just try and keep it on the inside limit of the pain level and make sure we get inside the time limit on the end of the day. The pressure at the front now by Team CSC is reducing this group in numbers. Picking up the pace now, you can see it's having an effect on the gap to the 3 leaders, 6 minutes and 19 seconds. Fabian Cancellara will ride as hard a time trial as he can here for the next 10 kilometers or so before they pass over the responsibility to Kurt Adler Arvidsson. Then after that, we have to see, if CSC want to do something today, Phil, we have to see an acceleration. And I have to think that probably the best tactic would be to launch Andy Schleck into the attack, counter-attack with Carlos Sastre, and then that puts the pressure on everybody else.
Well, we'll see how the plans unfold here. Peter Velits riding his first Tour de France and getting stronger as he gets towards Paris. That augurs well for his future as he sets the tempo here with Perez on the right here. And just tucked in Schumacher, who will have already assessed the strength of Velits now. That's why he's not attacking him. He's not perhaps quite as sharp as he was yesterday. He must be tired after that day he had in the Alps yesterday. Poor old Di Gregorio, he's riding at the moment now more than 3 minutes behind the riders who dropped him on the way down. 3:35 at the last check and 6:11 back to the peloton. So the peloton are going to catch him before the top of this climb.
No, I think they will. They will start to really crank it up over the next few kilometres. And if you just look at the back end of the main field here, Phil, this is a slightly flatter part of the course. It's a strange mountain, I was trying to explain a few moments ago, in the fact that it goes up in steps. And if you look at the long length of the main field, this is one of the flat steps.
Well, they'll appreciate that. It's certainly Cancellara will, this strong man, being followed by Kurt Arvidsson now. And hovering behind, dare I mention it, the image of Jens Voigt, the #1 workhorse of this team, who never seems to get tired.
Big beastie boy Jens, definitely. It looks as if he's waiting, he's itching now, I think, Phil, to see whether Fabian Cancellara is going to crack, because if he does, Jens is ready to take over. He wants to come out there and give some pounding on the front end of the main field, and the damage you can see is really being done now. This is not a lot of fun, I can tell you from experience, trying to hang on a stage like this.
I'm not sure he is hanging on.
Cancellara is going so fast around these corners, he's in fact starting to open up a few gaps at the front end of the main field. Behind him is his teammate Kurt Adler Arvidsson, a winner of the stage into Foix, and then just behind him is Jens Voigt, and they're all now waiting to see whether or not they've got the right tactics this afternoon to try and dethrone the men that they are all concerned about, the man that everybody felt was the overall favourite to win the Tour de France before the start of it, and that's Cadel Evans. And at the moment, if we stop the race right now, Phil, I'd have to say it's still very much advantage Evans, even though he's only in 3rd place overall.
But you know that this is the week that we'll see how this climb progresses. We're not even halfway up this climb by any means, and that pace is really fast. If they sense anybody is weakening, they're going to attack, whatever happens. It might even be Evans himself or Menchov who will start the attacks. All of the riders, of course, are afraid of the last climb of the day, because the crucial thing about an uphill finish is the individual timing at the top means you can lose all of your time in the last kilometre of the day.
Oh, absolutely. You can see here Stefan Schumacher just looking at the back wheel of Velits. Velits is a pretty impressive bike rider. He's an under-23 champion of the world, and he moved across to Team Milram this year, having the last year, Phil, ridden for the small German team of Team Weissenhof.
Well, there's no real change as we continue our climb up the Col de la Croix de Fer. This young man is dropping further back. He was with the leaders. He's now at 3:53. Remy Di Gregorio, he was dropped on the descent of the Col de Telegraph, which is an extension of the Col de Glibier. Up front, you still got Perez, Schumacher and Velits. They are losing a little bit. The computer's saying they will lead over the top by just over 2 minutes, and they started the climb with a 7-minute advantage. But we're seeing the riders shredded from the peloton by consistent pacemaking by Fabian Cancellara.
Yes, but I think that little dedication by our computer there was working on the average speed at the bottom of the climb, but you can see now that they've actually raised the level of the tempo in the peloton because of the removal of Stuart O'Grady being replaced by Fabian Cancellara, who's tapping out quite a wicked and ferocious tempo. And waiting in the wings there, you see just bobbing his head, that is Jens Voigt, the big German, and he's ready to rip this place to pieces if he can.
Still a very tight peloton here. Those a lot of riders can handle this speed just at this minute. The yellow jerseys come right up from the back to the front now. You can see in there Frank Schleck. Watch out for that polka dot jersey of Bernard Cole, because we think he's going to try and attack today. Austrian television have moved in, and they don't normally cover the sport of cycling in this manner, but they've suddenly found they have a sporting hero. And let's face it, they don't have too many in Austria. Heinrich Hausler here. Oh, we switched camera. That was Heinrich Hausler. And now with Thomas Volkler here.
Well, we are being assisted in our coverage here by the French television, so I think that's probably why we switched across.
Is he going off
Thomas
the back,
Volkler,
though? Because he scored points, you see. Yeah, this is Heinrich. This is Heinrich Hausler, the man from Inverell in New South Wales. He's still in the race, though.
A lot of damage at the back now. Nicolas Vaugondy, the French national champion, over on the right-hand side in the red, white and blue. Another rider disappearing is Rémi Poriol for Team Crédit Agricole. Here you can see the strata of the Col de la Croix de Fer as we start to make our way up over the same mountain range as we just actually crossed. The Col de la Croix de Fer is 29 kilometers long. The average gradient is only 5.2%, but we're going to climb up to 2,067 meters. And at the summit, it's 54 kilometers to go to the finish. And how about that for a winding road through the Alps?
Well, that's a nice picture of the Croix de Fer, Paul, and it really is a barren climb as we get up towards the summit. They can't get many spectators onto this climb because they would block it with their motor cars. There's usually a big crowd towards the end of the climb. And a good pacemaking by Cancellara, with these riders again willing to sacrifice all for their two potential leaders of the Tour.
It's the real crunch day for Team CSC. You can see they're already doing the business there, because this is another group being peeled off the back because of the pacemaking being done by CSC. They realize how important today is, Phil, because if they come out of this Alpine stage with the same time gaps over Cadel Evans, they know they've pretty much lost the Tour de France this afternoon.
Trent Lowe, the Australian, no, it's not Trent, it's David Miller who's going off the back here, just holding tempo, a little bit surprised. But he's hanging. This group is split away now from the main field. There was little acceleration there. Daniele Righi, you see the crack in the peloton to the left of our picture. Quite a big group going off together here, which is good for Miller, because it means they'll stick together and ride home together. That'll keep him well in the Tour de France. He supports Christian van der Velde, the leader of the Garmin-Chipotle team. And it's trouble here up front now, because this is the end for Ruben Perez, who's finding that Stefan Schumacher rather has lifted the pace that little bit more.
Yeah, well, that's just an indication of the quality of a rider like Peter Velits on the front there, Phil. You know, he's a young bike rider, but I think a couple of years ago, didn't he win the Giro del Capo in South Africa?
He did, and he's a very, very good young rider. There's a couple of good young riders coming out of South Africa right now. Velits, in fact, is a Slovakian. He used to go to South Africa and race there for a South African team, and then go back over to Slovakia and continue his season there. And now they've finally spotted a real talent. He's on a big team here.
Well, he's got a strong ally with him as well, because Stefan Schumacher was a man who dominated yesterday's stage for an awful long time. And I think the advantage is that these two riders seem to be riding with a similar amount of style and a similar amount of tempo that they can put into this. And it's always a help when you've got a rider in a group like this with you, especially on the mountains.
Tempo riding here, and they've rapidly distanced Ruben Perez very, very quickly. We've got a few spectators managing to get this far up the Croix de Fer now. 74 kilometers and 5 minutes 18 the gap. That acceleration has really hurt Di Gregorio as well. He's now back to 4 1/4 minutes, with the peloton just 1 minute and 4 seconds behind him. So they're going to wipe him out sooner than we thought. Here they come. This is Fabian Cancellara, continues the tempo riding. Now, he's not a great climber, he's a very strong man, and so while he's still there, the pure climbers won't be under pressure.
Well, he's a bit of a beast, though, Phil, especially on an incline like this, because in the early slopes, we're only looking at an average gradient of 4.5 to 5.5%. So he can use his big power on that kind of gradient. This is Pippo Pozzato, and he's trying to ride a Vincenzo Nibali back into the race here, Phil, because I think the man who was the leader of the white jersey competition is under pressure.
These are the hard moments of the Tour de France. Nibali here, number 67, is a young rider in his first Tour, and they're trying to keep him in the hunt for that white best rookie jersey. And this rider who's won stage the Tour, 61 there, Pozzato. This is Robbie McEwen, who has also had enough now, the sprinter for Australia. He's seen Cadel Evans safely left in that main field. He's got to handle himself now, Cadel, because he may only have Popovic with him now.
Well, Popovic are riding a lot better over the last couple of days, Phil, just looking up to the magnificent high spots here. And I presume that must be the Pic de Meige, which is the big mountain around here. And that's on the other side. In fact, we've crisscrossed this mountain range, strangely enough. Just looking down on the main field, Phil, there's a little bit of breaking news coming here. And in fact, the organisers of the Saunier Duval squad have announced today that they will stop sponsoring professional cycling with immediate effect because of the positive doping test for Ricardo Rico.
Well, that's the second blow. That's the second sponsor to pull from the sport because of the actions of the irresponsible 1 or 2 individuals they've got on the teams there. Bala World also announcing the same. Although they've agreed to pay their riders till the end of 2009, they won't have their branding on the riders' jerseys. That's what Barlow World are saying from South Africa.
Well, it's pretty sad, but there have to be victims in a war against doping. And I think the sad thing is, for most of the riders on Sonia Duval, Phil, I think they really feel deceived and angry about what one of their riders or two of their riders did in secret away from the rest of the group. And unfortunately for them, it's cost a lot of people their jobs. And it's not just one or two riders that lose a job when the sponsorship ends. It can be as many as 50 to 70 people in the whole of the company.
Well, Arrieta is the latest climber to get dropped, is just off our camera there, number 102, Jose Luis Arrieta. This is him here. He shouldn't really get dropped. He's not a bad climber, but he's certainly in trouble in this Tour de France, and he's not going to stay there much longer. 5 minutes 5 seconds, the yellow jersey group to the race leader. So now that they've dropped Perez up front, they're more than holding their own, and Velits and Schumacher seem to have found their strengths here.
Well, what you've got to understand about a team like this, Phil, is they get so much strength out of the belief that they're doing this for a reason. And Fabian Cancellara, although you keep mentioning the fact that he's not a climber, he's on the easier slopes of the Col de la Croix de Fer, where the gradient is not really very much more than 4 or 4.5%. He can use his power on that climb because he's thinking, I can do this for another kilometre. I can do this for another 2 kilometres, and he will keep doing that. He'll be right on the edge of going into full lactic acid production, right on the edge of blowing himself to pieces. But in the back of his mind, he's saying, if this is hurting me, it's hurting everybody else. It's hurting Cadel Evans, it's hurting Denny Menchov, but it's setting something up for my leaders, Carlos Sastre and Frank Schleck.
As you can see by these two riders now, they're on a steeper gradient, and I would reckon it's about here where we'll see the end of Cancellara in his pacemaking, because these boys are pushing on now. They had to kick out of that last corner. Velits here speaks English. His native tongue is Slovakian, and no doubt he also speaks German.
This is a little bit further back. This will be the chaser, Ruben Perez. And a quick check on the deficit here. Ruben Perez is currently at around about 50 seconds. De Gregorio is miles further back. He's at almost 4 minutes and 45 seconds, so he's not far away from getting picked up by the front end of the main field. On the big mountain stages like this, normally we look at using we normally use it looking 3 motorbikes. Well, today, because there's so much goes on the big mountain stages, there are 4 motorbikes out on the road to try and keep the story as clear as possible. But even then, it's not always that easy.
No, they do a very difficult job well. There's no question about that. The images today are stunningly beautiful, as well as seeing the riders making their full effort. Here's the catch. They've come up very quickly in the end, and it's still, look at the tempo riding of Fabian Cancellara. How much longer can he do this for? Remy Di Gregorio dropped on the descenters now. Oh, he's shocked that they're there so quickly. They're going through on his inside. I'm not sure he can lift his pace now. We'll see.
Well, he is normally a very good climber. He may well have been riding well within himself, hoping to try and latch onto this bus as it comes by. But you can see the faces of those guys from Team CSC, and you can see the damage that Fabian Cancellara, Phil, is doing here this afternoon, because already Luis Leon Sanchez, and that's a bit of a surprise because he's a great climber, also slipping back there. Yep, Portal.
Gutierrez, all climbers, well, not all climbers, but all strong men and teammates of Valverde. And they can't handle it today, and neither can Chavanel here.
Sylvain Chavanel, he's been pretty aggressive throughout the Tour de France. We've talked an awful lot about him, but now he's finding the Col de la Croix de Fer just a little bit too difficult. And you can see they are definitely trying to set something up, Team CSC, but to do it, they've got to start changing the rhythm. But I don't think they'll start to change the rhythm until they've really given everything, with Cancellara, with Gustav, and of course with Kurt Atler Arvidsson.
Well, it's still such a long way up here, Paul. There's still about 12 kilometres more. 18, no, it can't be 18 kilometres. It could be, I suppose. According to the computer, the leaders are ahead with 18 kilometres still to climb, and this peloton is getting smaller and smaller.
There's still a long way to go to the summit of this climb. The summit of the climb, in fact, is at 156 kilometres covered. So the summit is at 54.5 kilometres to go. So we're still, Phil, looking at climbing for another good 50 minutes.
Yes, 138 kilometres covered at the moment. 72 still to ride.
Going through the field, checking on all the guys who are getting dropped to one by one. That was Gerd Stegman's dropping backwards. This is Carlos Barredo. He's one of the Spanish climbers on Team Quickstep. He too is feeling just how difficult the pressure is and the pace which is being dished out by Team CSC. He's going through the field here. There is Nicolas Vaugondi, just on the far side there. A quick glimpse of Gianpaolo Ciulla, number 54, and George Hincapie, number 47. Hincapie's been down. You can see his shorts are pretty much ripped to pieces there. In front of him is Dmitry Fofanov. And there's a lot of riders now slowly but surely disappearing away from the front end of the main field here because of the pressure that's being dished out by one team. And that team is CSC. CSC Saxo Bank. That's a new sponsor that's just come into the sport. Got to mix and match a little bit. We talked about two sponsors disappearing from the sport. Team Barlow World pulling the plug, and of course just a few moments ago we learned that Team Saunier Duval were pulling the plug as well. But put a positive into that. There's three major sponsors coming into the sport, and they've signed up for the next 3 years, and Saxo Bank is one of them.
4 minutes 29, just sitting in behind is Kurt Attelhavers, and he won the stage into Foix, the only stage win for CSC so far. But they're thinking of the final win of the Tour de France in Paris. They're riding like a winning team, but they're not cracking the men they fear most yet.
Well, they've still got a lot of men left. Just look at that man sitting behind the yellow jersey. He's the joker in the pack, I have to say, Phil, here this afternoon, because nobody knows how good Bernard Cole is going to be on the Alpe d'Huez.
George Hincapie looks to be in trouble now. He's dropping back here as he loses ground. George has crashed today. He gained back to the peloton, but the steeper slopes of the Croix de Fer has seen him go. And it looks here as though we are losing Gianpaolo Ciulla of Barlow World. We haven't seen John Lee Augustin, but he's certainly up ahead here.
Well, he should be just slipping back. Now, this is not good to see number 7 here, Phil, because this is Jaroslav Popovic, and he very well may be the last teammate of Cadel Evans in that group.
So it could be that the leaders, the pacemakers, have got what they wanted. They've isolated Cadel Evans in the peloton. As we see the pacemakers up front, there's Popovic. Now, he's still in the group there, but we need our camera to tilt up and see if that group is split or not. Alessandro Ballan is 72. Popovic looks to be under a little bit of pressure here. We're going to find out now.
Martin Elmiger dripping away there on the far side. Interesting to see, Phil, a lot of the men of orange, Euskadel Euskadi, dropping off the back. Not surprising to see Oscar Freire. He looks very comfortable, really. This is a man who is a man from the plains. I have to think, Phil, that Oscar Freire there is showing us probably some of the best condition he's ever had in his career.
Yes, he drops off voluntarily almost. He knows when he's reaching his limit, so he doesn't break his neck. He just drops off to live again. Looks like Danny Pate up front there.
Yep, it's Danny Pate. Yeah. He's dropping off the pace. Look at that gorge down over to the left-hand side. We have still got an awful long way to go to the summit of this climb. And still, Spartacus the Gladiator on the front of the main field. Fabian Cancellara is dishing out the pain. He's eliminating one by one riders from this group, which has become a very select group of riders, Phil. And I wonder whether or not Cadel Evans is going to be concerned about the fact that I think he is now isolated.
Well, you can see the whole length of what's left of the group at the moment. This is Sandy Cassar, number 161. He should be okay as we disappear into the tunnel. Let's hope they all come out the other side.
All of the heads of state are still in the front part of the main field, though. Schleck, Cole, Evans, Sastre, Menchov and Christian van der Velde are in this group that we're looking at here, Phil, but it is not now a very big group. There is van der Velde over to the right-hand side in the white jersey with the blue sleeves on.
He might be on a better day today. Well, he's paying attention. He's right up there.
I think he's. Everybody will have a bad day at some time during the Tour de France. You just don't want to have it on a mountain stage.
No, but that's where you usually do have it. But today, he may be feeling better again. As we continue now, the peloton is becoming a very select place to be. A lot of riders are now behind the Tour de France, and there's still nobody attacked. It's still all the work of the domestiques of Team CSC. this man in particular, world time trial champion Fabian Cancellara, followed by his teammate Kurt Adel-Arvidsson. Once we go in there, we'll lose the picture.
Well, we will, but this is a plan, and that was a man in a time trial position that you were looking at there. Bear in mind, they started the climb with around about 6.5 minutes deficit on the two leaders. Now it's come down to 4 minutes, and that's all because of the work of one team, Team CSC. We are, Phil, looking at 14 kilometers to go to the summit of this climb.
Exactly.
And that it correlates to around about 35 to 40 minutes.
Exactly, and that's why this pace-making will be unrelentless here until they put the leaders into a position to make a move. These are the two leaders, an interminable climb at a Croix de Fer, this Velic and Schumacher. Velic is doing 80% of the work, and it's a very interesting fact, I think, Paul. Maybe he's becoming a little bit too strong for Schumacher.
Well, he's definitely a star for the future, I have to say, at 24 years of age. They've got 1.5 minutes advantage over Ruben Perez and 4 minutes advantage over the front end of the main field. But that, I think, is a race against a race. We're going to see something happen in this main field shortly. I feel absolutely certain. These guys are not going to ride their hearts out like this just to take all the heads of state to the foot of the Alpe d'Huez to have a battle on the final climb of the day, the final big climb of the Tour de France. I think they're waiting to set something up very shortly. Now look at this, Gustav moving up alongside. How are you doing? What's the gradient like? Can you keep this going a little bit longer? Yes, I can, no problem.
Well, look at the size of the peloton. All done by the riding, first by Stuart O'Grady, then by Nicky Sorensen, now by Fabian Cancellara. He has reduced this peloton wholesale. Meanwhile, Jens Voigt is at the back here.
Only for drinks. He's just gone back to make sure that everybody's okay. Team manager up alongside him there, hands up the drinks to Big Jens. He takes on board bottles for himself first, and then he'll take on drinks on board for the rest. And Carlos Sastre coming back also. This is amazing.
Well, that is amazing. What is Sastre doing here?
Taking on board drinks like everybody else. This is the amazing thing, Phil, about this team. They will all work together. It doesn't matter if you're top man or the bottom man. They're all equal.
We are looking at the front of a very, very rapidly reducing peloton here, thanks to the work of the upside-down number 13, Fabian Cancellara, on the front. His teammate Jens Voigt has been seen at the back picking up the drinking bottle for these boys, and also back there too, number 11, his team captain Sastre. But this peloton, if we ever get an aerial shot of it, there's about 35 riders left now. All of the favourites of the Tour are still here, with one or two just observing the story unfolding.
Well, Phil, this is the slightly easier part of the climb as well, with the gradient only averaging out around about 3.5 to 4.5%. Once we get up to the final 10 kilometers of climbing, then it really does start to get very grippy indeed, because then we've got the steeper gradients, the gradients of between 7 and 10%. And that's when I think we will finally see the attacks starting to come from the leaders of Team CSC, Carlos Sastre in particular, and of course Frank Schleck, if he can make the move here this afternoon, with great assistance, I would expect, from his brother Andy Schleck, because this middle part here at 14 kilometers to go to 8 kilometers to go is a really easy part of the climb at 4.5%. It's the last 8 kilometers where it gets very grippy.
Well, that's where it's going to happen then. That has to be where it will happen. This is Rubens Perez here, dropped from the leaders. And there is the lonely journey through the Alps today for those who are in trouble, as we wind and steadily climb until finally we top that ridge in the distance. Two leaders down there and an awful lot of riders behind now. It's a beautiful day here too. It's a very warm day, and not as warm it is for these riders out there. It looks to me as though Schumacher can't work with Velic anymore.
Well, I have a feeling that Schumacher is probably paying for the effort that he put into yesterday's breakaway. He was away for an awful long time over the Col de la Lombard and on the early slopes of the Col de la Bonnette Reste de Fond. But this, as you can see, as we're on the flatter part of this course, is where they're still dishing out the pain. Jens Voigt is back up to the front. He went to the team car just a few moments ago to get drinks. He's distributed it to all of the boys. Let's keep refreshed, let's keep hydrated, and that may well not be the case for everybody. A situation like this is very scary if you're a race leader or a team leader like Cadel Evans, because I haven't seen, Phil, whether or not Cadel Evans has any teammates left in this group.
Well, he's got a couple now, because I think Popovic just got back. A lot of riders have just come back, in fact.
So
there's Johan van Summeren up here.
So that's lucky.
Yeah, on this flatter section, a lot of riders. This peloton's gone up from 35 to about 60 again all of a sudden. So they've recovered a little bit on the flatter section.
Well, that would be a big advantage to Cadel Evans, and fortunately for him, he does have a few guys to come up alongside him because
smile.
We're on candid camera. And that's the two leaders.
There they are, and they're still looking good. Well, I'm not too sure about Schumacher. He wanted to stay away for the whole day today. Well, he's got a great ally here in Velits. 3:49, though, is the gap. They're eating into this lead. Now they're saying we'll go over the top with a 1:32 advantage. So they are slowly catching these two.
Well, if you just look at the pedaling action of these two riders, I have to say that just looking at Velits there, Phil, he's got a very nice, smooth pedaling action. He's using a much smaller gear than the German rider on the right-hand side. The Schumacher's using a heavier gear. And in the mountains, you can actually recover a lot better if you keep your gear ratios down and use suppleness. A certain man by the name of Lance Armstrong taught us that.
Yeah, absolutely right. So there's Perez. He's 2 minutes now and only 1:46 ahead of the peloton.
So he's losing huge chunks of time now as we head towards the summit of the Col d'Isère. Col de la Croix de Fer, I meant. We're going into the department of the Isère next. Just looking there, as you can see, this is a pretty rugged part of the world. A serious amount of erosion has happened down there as well. We're looking at around about 65 kilometers to go to the finish and 54 kilometers to the finish from the summit of the Col de la Croix de Fer. This should be the small village of Saint-Orlin. As you can see, well, there you can see Cadel Evans. He's got two teammates up alongside. It must be Van Summeren and Popovic.
Enjoying the sun with the parasol as we're looking here at the two leaders. 3:40, Schumacher and Peter Velits. Velits from Slovakia and riding all the time now on the front. Schumacher contributing nothing.
Well, I think he's contributing nothing, Phil, because he can contribute nothing. I think he's just once again hit the wall, and it was about the same time that he hit the wall yesterday after around about 150 kilometers. 10 kilometers to go to the summit of the Col de la Croix de Fer, and in about 2 kilometers time they will start to get to the very grippy part of this climb. And for Stefan Schumacher, I wonder if he's got enough in those legs to actually stay with Peter Velits.
Well, there's the riders crossing a bridge. You can get some idea from this shot how many riders have come back onto the back of the peloton. It's quite a big bunch now. Still all CSC doing all of the work. Looking down there, I think we've got Popovic back in this pack.
Well, no, he's here.
Oh,
he's
right.
just about,
he's coming back now.
I'm hoping he's just about to get himself back onto the tail end of that group there, because it is very important for Cadel Evans to have a man like Jaroslav Popovic alongside him. But it just gives you an indication of how tough the pace is that's being set at the front there by, of course, Fabian Cancellara. This is rather sad to see, because
John Lee Augustin,
I was going to say he is having a hard time, Phil, because of that pressure. You can't blame him really, because at 21 years of age he doesn't have the strength that you get from riding 2 or 3 Grand Tours in your legs.
There's one of the local bears clapping on the way here for the two leaders at 3:26, and still it is just Velits doing the pacemaking. Well, John Lee there just needs to hang in. It's a tough day for him, and he's still got to climb Alpe d'Huez. Looks like a nasty case of measles there for the local cow. But
Velits calling for a drink, I should think, here.
Yeah. So cruel. We're still a long way to climb to the top of the Croix de Fer. We top out at 156. We've done 145 and a half.
And there are still 6 riders left there, Phil, from Team CSC, and 3 of them at least are still very much dedicated to stamping out the pressure at the front end of the group. That's Eric Zabel starting to disappear.
Was that rider Hushovd there as well? Because he had a great ride yesterday.
I think it was Ryder Hesjedal, and he was a great asset yesterday to Christian van der Velde. In fact, when van der Velde crashed on the descent, Ryder Hesjedal was alongside him pretty quickly and tried to pace him back down towards the finish line. Unfortunately for Christian, that was not going to be the case, and he lost himself a bit of time, but still keeps himself high up in the overall standings, Phil, and I reckon he's got a great chance of finishing on the podium.
Igor Martinez, the man who lost the stage to Simon Gerrans at the top of Prado Nervoso, also in trouble. Heimar Zubeldia also having one of his bad tours. He's twice finished 5th in it. Now this is where they kicked up to the 8%, Paul. After that, as you said, in the last 8 kilometres, that's where we are. And the road is kicked now, and they've started to go off the back again.
Well, they really are. It's this infernal pressure. The French national champion, I have to say, the red, white and blue jersey on Nicolas Vaugondy has changed this man as a bike rider, because normally in previous tours he would have been gone by now, but he's trying to do honour to the French national champion's jersey. This man is trying to do honour to the world time trial champion jersey that he's not allowed to wear in this time trial that he's riding today, because it's actually a road race.
That's right. And just pull back there, the peloton is still quite large. There's still a lot of guys there. As we go up to the last 8 to 9 kilometres at Saint-Jean-d'Arve. And you're seeing now still Cancellara. How much longer can this man ride like this? Jens Voigt waiting to take over if necessary, but Fabian they'll use to his limit.
Well, you know, it's something very special when you're working for a project like that, and these riders are working for a project here this afternoon, and that project is trying to win the Tour de France, trying to put Evans and Menchov and maybe Christian van der Velde into difficulty, with a view to having their men taking over the pacemaking a little bit later on and launching some vicious attacks.
Well, the catch is not very far away from Ruben Perez now. They're going to see him very shortly. He's less than half a minute ahead of them, and that will leave just these two riders. And watch out, as Schumacher throwing off his bottles there, trying to get some new ones. Peter Velits not waiting for him here, pushing on the pressure, and it's also getting a little bit grippy at the back, because this is where I think we might see the end of Cancellara here. He can't keep going like this.
Well, he's not too far away from seeing the end of Ruben Perez either, Phil, because he's only about 10 or 15 seconds ahead of Fabian Cancellara on the road. But Schumacher there...
Oh, he did well.
He did well to pull himself back up, and I'm pretty certain he probably got the professional bottle there, the bottle that accelerates you up to about 60 kilometres an hour for 10 seconds. There is Ruben Perez. Job done, day over.
Yes, watch over the shoulder, Ruben, because a week back, oh, there we are. That's it. He's back in the fold. 2 versus the rest now. 2 of the original 4. And Cancellara doesn't look at him. He just puts his head down, thinks of the rhythm in those big legs, and concentrates on just riding a pace that hurts everybody. Look at the riders further down the line. They're grovelling to grab wheels here. He's got them under pressure.
There's a lot of riders under pressure, Phil, in this group here this afternoon. The men who are looking to do something later on there, you can just see the white and the yellow jersey locked together. 2 brothers in arms this afternoon, Andy and Frank Schleck. They are thinking about trying to win this bike race for Luxembourg. And behind the man who might spoil the party, Bernard Kohl. A lot of people are concerned about Bernard Kohl, the Austrian rider, Phil, because they have no idea how good his climbing ability is going to be on the slopes of the Alpe d'Huez.
Yes, it's going to be a very intriguing ascent on the slopes of Alpe d'Huez, that's for sure. The gap down to 3 minutes and 2 seconds now. These two are all that's left in front. In that back group, we've got Cadel Evans, of course. We've got Carlos Sastre, Cancellara, Andy and Frank Schleck. Ruben Perez is there. Bernard Kohl, Denny Menchov, all the heads are in that group. We've seen no weaknesses from the men who have dominated this Tour de France yet. Another rider cracks. Perez goes out of the back now. Can't keep up, neither will he try to. He's got to get to the finish. He's had his moments in front of the cameras. Now he has to beat the time limit, but there's a lot of riders behind, so he'll be okay.
Phil, this is an unbelievable, infernal pace that I have never seen before. Not even the days of Team Discovery Channel or US Postal Service have I seen a team on the front like this trying to destroy the bike race. These guys are not setting a tempo. They're trying to destroy the race. They're trying to destroy Cadel Evans. They're trying to destroy Denny Menchov and Christian van der Velde, and hope that their sprinters, their climbers, haven't been destroyed themselves.
Well, this is how Lance Armstrong used to ride with his team on the front. I don't know, if they don't attack and lift the pace up and down, they'll never break Cadel Evans or Denny Menchov. This is the town. I can't read the spelling of it, but that's the town that they're going through here. There we look to. There's nobody missed out of all the contenders at the moment. They're still in there. And for me, Christian van der Velde is now on a good day. He's not far away from the lead here, so he is watching. He said if he sees his chance and he feels good, he will attack, and he's looking good at the moment. There's Andy Schleck in the white jersey. Johan van Summeren alongside Evans, looking after him and hurting himself, but he's doing it just now.
Effenkin moving up there as well for Team AG2R. Good to see a lot of these riders are just staying. There's Kim Kirken, there's Christian van der Velde, looking very concentrated indeed, Phil. I have to say, he doesn't look like a man under pressure at all at the moment.
It looks as though he's almost relishing the thought of climbing Alpe d'Huez to me. There's Carlos Sastre. He always looks a little bit tired, but he never seems to get left behind. Astalosa, there's Menchov.
Denny Menchov, this is a man whose face does not give us any sign of the emotion that he's going through at the moment. A little bit further back, there's Koos Moerenhout. He's got the red, white and blue, former Dutch national champion Constantine Sitsu. He's a great rider, a brilliant rider. I think a man that we'll talk a lot about in the future, but still banging away at the front, banging his head against this wall, which is the Col de la Croix de Fer, is in fact Fabian Cancellara, and now Peter Velits has gone. Peter Velits has now decided to fly the coupe, and he's left Stefan Schumacher behind. This is a great acceleration by this young man, Phil.
Well, that's a fantastic effort by the young man here as he goes to the summit now in his first Tour de France, looking for the maximum point at the top of the all-category climb. Schumacher clearly struggling, didn't do any work on this climb with him, he couldn't, and now Velits has decided he wants all of the prize for himself.
Well, he certainly does. He felt now that, well, the fact is, Phil, we are getting to the steepest part of this climb. From now to the summit, it does not go below an 8% gradient. And Velits is climbing very comfortably. He's got a nice cadence. He's turning over at around about 90 to 95 revolutions a minute, and he looks comfortable on the machine. He doesn't look as if he's under any pressure. Whereas if you look at this group here, everybody in this group, Phil, I think is under pressure. Cadel Evans is there. Johan van Summeren is pulling himself inside out because he knows he has to stay there with his man Cadel for as long as possible.
There's Sybil, who's overlooking the riders as they go past. It is still for the leader 6 and a bit kilometers to climb. He's gone at around 6.5 kilometers from the summit. And still, Cancellara sets the pace here. It is such a fast tempo. I'm surprised half of the race are hanging on at the back there now.
This is a job in hand. He's concentrated. He's just thinking this is the World Time Trial Championships once again for Fabian Cancellara. He's used to riding like this completely and utterly on his own. Those guys behind will be feeling superior. Andy Schleck in the white jersey, Frank Schleck in the yellow jersey, say these guys are doing this to me. It puts you into a position, Phil, where you've got to take the responsibility of being a leader to the team. I'm a bit concerned that Carlos Sastre riding so far back in the tail of this group. Mind you, he is riding alongside Alejandro Valverde.
Well, it's his team that's doing all the pacemaking. He is the alleged leader of the squad, but it's another man, Frank Schleck, who is the definite leader right now because he's got the maillot jaune on his shoulders. So we'll see. Today we'll decide which one will try to lead this race for them to Paris, that's for sure. David Moncoutier, 188, no matter who drops off, he still holds on that last position.
Well, he's staying there. He certainly is one of those riders who has this fear of riding at the front end of the main field, but he's actually showing some pretty good form here because as every rider is getting eliminated from the group, he's jumping by them one by one and staying in contact. And he may well be trying to get into his head the possibility of an attack on the slopes of the Alpe d'Huez. The lone leader now, Tête de la Course. Peter Velits has got the team manager up alongside him, and he's keeping himself hydrated.
Good for him too.
So just looking at Peter Velits, he was 24 years old at the start of the year, and he's the under-23 champion of the world, and he was national under-23 time trial and road racing champion of Slovakia back in 2006. Used to ride for the South African team with Konica Minolta, for who he got himself 5 victories, and he's dispensed Stefan Schumacher off the front end of the breakaway. So Velits, just looking at him again, got no wins to his credit so far this season. And just having a look. Just checking out the gears, and as you can see, he's on the inside chainring. That's the smallest gear that he's possibly got on the bike this afternoon. And he was riding 2 or 3 sprockets down from the left-hand side. And the idea is to keep himself at a nice cadence, find a position that's comfortable, find a speed that's comfortable, keep yourself just on the edge of pain. So, just trying. Well, just looking down here at this young man from Slovakia, he really is riding himself into a little bit of fame for his country this afternoon. He spent a lot of his youth actually riding for the South African teams, and he rode very early on for 2 years for Konica Minolta in South Africa. And during that period, he won himself the under-23 time trial and road racing championships of his country. Stefan Schumacher now looks to me like he's pretty much hit the wall here this afternoon. And I don't think it'll be very long before he's going to see the front end of the main field. Team CSC are still trying to strangle this race, trying to dominate this race, trying to blow the race to absolute pieces. Now, if they're going to do that, they're going to have to come up with the goods, and the responsibility is going to have to come up to their men later on. So as we're now looking at around about 7 kilometers to go to the summit of the Col de la Croix de Fer, it really is hammer time for the men from Team CSC. Cyril Dessel here in a spotter bother, yesterday's winner.
Well, the face of Cyril Dessel, the man that won yesterday from the front, is now going off the back along with Laurent Lefebvre. He's gone, Sandy Cassar, Paul. And still, this incessant pacemaking, as much as we are admiring it, it is not getting to the riders it's supposed to get to.
Not yet, but the only thing I can hope for Team CSC is they know what they're doing here this afternoon, because this group, Phil, is starting to get reduced in numbers. Menchov looks to be suffering a little bit down towards the back of that group, and finally Fabian Cancellara has disappeared from the group. Damiano Cunego is about to go.
Yes, he's hurt, Damiano, and that has to be expected. He's fallen a little bit below what we expected from Damiano Cunego.
Johan van Sommeren is going to be the next man to go. That's 1 man less for Cadel Evans. It's destroying almost everybody. Now, the only reason they can set a pace like this, and the only good reason to do it, is if their climbers, Frank Schleck, Andy Schleck and Carlos Sastre, are going to do something a little bit later on. They've still got 2 men left in the fold who can work for them. Kurt Atler Arvidsson now has to commit suicide for the team. He's got to throw himself into this pace. But the only reason they can do this, Phil, is if the climbers have got the acceleration to go away later on. Otherwise, it's a waste of energy.
It is going to be every man for himself on Alpe d'Huez now. These boys are looking for the 5 kilometers to go to the summit. That bunch now has really thinned out. But and there is the 5 kilometers to go. That probably is for Peter Velits, is it? Or is it for the group here? It's for Velits, yeah. He gets the 5 to go. He is riding to a wonderful climb here to take the points at the top. That the battle for the Tour is still here. Christian van der Velde looking extremely strong now. So too Cadel Evans. Question mark, according to Paul, on Denny Menchov. Sastre is looking good. They could be just left together on this mountain when we go to the finish.
Well, in fact, Denny Menchov has moved right up to the front end of the group there along the side of Cadel Evans, while Fabian Cancellara, not surprisingly, Phil, disappearing from the front end of this group. He has ridden an unbelievably solid race here. Botcherov disappearing there. Nicolas Vaugondi is doing, I would have to say, probably one of the rides of his lives here to try and stay in contact. Here is big Jens Voigt. Jens
Still
Voigt
there and hanging.
Only just hanging, though.
Well, he's still hanging. He's about 6 kilometers from the top of this group now. Still a hard section of the road to come as they all start to shed now. We're getting to a very select group of riders. If you look at those orange jerseys, by the way, the man we're not expecting to see is 131, Denny Menchov. There goes.
Carlos,
no.
Panic.
It was
Looked like 11.
Gustav. What it's doing now, Paul, we're going to be left with the 2 Schlecks and Carlos Sastre, Cadel Evans, Denny Menchov, Christian van der Velde. Just the men who are being the challengers of this year's Tour de France.
It's Sammy Sanchez. The team had said this morning it's all for Sammy Sanchez. But Sammy, if you want to go for it on the Alpe d'Huez, you better just get onto the back step of the bus there this afternoon, because it looks like the train is leaving the station. Kurt Adler Arvidsson now at 5 kilometers to go as well, Phil, just stamping out the pace. They really don't have too many men left, and certainly they've got to start to think about when they're going to launch the attack. Stefan Schumacher is at 1:21, so he's only around about 18 seconds ahead of this very select group.
Well, you know, we're seeing here an elimination of all bar the favourites of the Tour de France. Now, normally in the past, we've headed to the Alpe with a group and the teammates still driving that group. This time, it's going to be a very different Tour de France. You look down now on a very select peloton at 1:39 behind the lone leader up front. Schumacher still in between. Peter Vellet's leading. He's about 3.5 kilometres from the summit. These guys are approaching 4 kilometres, and he's just in front of them. He's cracked big time very fast.
Well, he really has cracked a huge time here, Phil, this afternoon, and he's slipping backwards. He'll get picked up shortly. I'm waiting to see here whether or not there's going to be any move at all that's going to come from Team CSC.
I don't think it's going to come on the climb.
They've done what they expected to do. They've isolated almost everybody in the group here this afternoon, but they're leaving it a little bit late if they want to get big time on Cadel Evans and Denny Menchov, because if they don't do something now, they'll all go over the summit of this climb together, and that'll leave just one solution left, Phil. Showdown on the Alpe d'Huez.
Of course, and you've got to get 3 minutes. A lovely congratulations there from Bernard Cole, the teammate of Schumacher there. Just thanked him for making the pace because he's diverted attention from Bernard Cole. Cole is right there, and I think a serious danger now to everybody in this Tour de France. He could win it, and he knows it as he climbs so well. And they're using now CSC, their last workhorse in Arvidsson on the front. Then they're isolated, 2 Schlecks and Sastre against the rest.
Well, the thing is, Phil, they've also then got the 10 kilometres ride along the Valley Road. It's from the top of the Col de la Croix de Fer. It's pretty much all the way downhill until they get into the Valley of Oison, and then it's a big charge along the Valley Road to the start of the final climb of the day, l'Alpe d'Huez. I have a feeling, I've just noticed in that group, the very select group that we're looking at, a young rider from Kenya. Number 57, Chris Froome, seems to be still in contact with the leaders on this day.
We'll have a look at that because Chris was the one dropped yesterday. It was John Lee, his teammate, who made it. John Lee's gone now, and Chris may be there. Well, that'll be a great ride by him. But there's another young man here. This man knows Chris Froome, used to race in Africa with him, Peter Vellet. As he comes up towards the summit, he's still a little way to go, and this is where the crowd is now.
I have a feeling they raced on the same team for a short while. 3.3 kilometres to the summit of the Col de la Croix de Fer. We're getting now out into the open part of this climb, Phil, and this is the part of the climb where it really starts to get hot because there's hardly any breeze in this part of the world here. You can just see on the left-hand side there a red and white jersey, and that's a rider from Team Bala World, and I think I would bet my bottom dollar now that that is Chris Froome.
18 riders in the group. They're chasing one man who the computer says he'll be caught a kilometre into the descent of the Col de la Croix de Fer, and so he might well. It looks as though Schumacher is now steadily fading to the back of the race here. He's just got to ride home and do the best he can. Number 49 there is Sitsu of the Columbia team.
Well, I have a feeling the way the race is developing just now, Phil, we may well see on the descent a swelling in numbers once again, which could be very important on the tactical run-in along the bottom valley road of Oison, because there, if the team CSC, who've dominated all of the pacemaking here, and they've ripped the race to pieces, then all of a sudden they'll find that they'll be a little bit isolated themselves, and they'll have to do all of the pacemaking. There is Chris Froome, number 57. Yeah. That's a brilliant ride by a man who had a pretty sad news this year, because just about a month before the start of the Tour de France, his mother passed away, and he stopped riding his bike for 12 days, and the team said, come on, Chris, come back to South Africa, get yourself back into the good state of mind, and we'll pick you for the Tour. And here he is.
And he's riding superbly just now. The back of the peloton, this very select group of 18 men. As we pass their Bouygues Telecom camp there, by the look of it, I don't think there's much left for them to cheer in this group at the moment. We're getting up to the top. It doesn't get any easier now. We're not far. In fact, Peter Vellet must be heading right up to the top. It's Peter Weening just come back onto the back of this group of riders here. Vellet is going to go over the top first, but not by very much.
Well, not by very much, and still Kurt Adler-Arvidsson.
Oh, what a lovely picture.
Well, it is.
Riding a bike.
It is for you and I sitting here just looking down from the great height on that, Phil, but it's not if you're a professional bike rider, because you've still got an awful long way to drag your body up to the top of this mountain. It's a dramatic mountain, the Col de la Croix de Fer, and it's a dramatic descent over the other side as well.
And still, it looks as though Kurt Adler-Arvidsson is going to go over the top here. He'll be an invaluable rider for Team CSC. It'll give them 4 men in this front group, and the odds-on, again, hitting at different angles. We've not seen any effort from Cadel Evans. You can see him, let me see, 3, 6, 7 riders down the line, actually on the wheel of Chris Froome, Cadel Evans, and he's not in any difficulty at all. He's waiting for what he knows now will be showdown on the climb of the Alpe d'Huez. And if he doesn't lose a minute on the climb, he'll win the Tour de France. He knows that, Paul.
Well, that's all he has to do on a day like this, Phil. He knows he's just got to watch Frank Schleck. He knows he's got to watch Bernard Cole. He knows he cannot give too much time to the climbers. He's got, I think, in his mind, Phil, a magical number that he feels he can leave the Alps behind the overall leaders and still win this bike race. However, he's keeping it very secret because he won't share it with us.
I don't blame him, frankly, because the pressure that's on him is enormous. The whole of Australia is cheering for him. They've never had an Australian favourite before, and they've certainly never had an Australian winner of the Tour. There's Andy Schleck now proudly displaying the white jersey. He's improving in that classification today because Nibali has gone. Well, the snow's down, so it must be approaching winter.
Well, no, Phil, it's actually right in the middle of summer, and we're right in the middle of July, believe it or not, and we're just about at one of the highest spots of the Alps this afternoon as we're looking to the summit of the Col de la Croix de Fer. Over the far of the valley there, that is the... it's not the Pic de Midi, you've got me confused now. That is the Pic Blanc.
I didn't say anything.
No, but you've been talking about it for the last 2 days.
This is there's Froome snatching a drink and pouring it over his head wisely and not down his throat, because they like only drinks from their team cars. There's still a few friends of Denny Menchoff in there, Paul. A few Rabobank jerseys have managed to complete this climb with him.
Well, all the teammates, Phil, today are scrambling to stay in contact because they know how important it is to have a teammate along the valley road leading up to the foot of the Alpe d'Huez this afternoon. Here you can see this is a brilliant ride by this young man, Peter Velits, and I reckon he's a man who's got a great future ahead of him. And it's such a shame, Phil, that we've had a couple of nasty stories in the Tour de France this year of doping and drug scandals, because what I'm looking at here is a lot of young riders coming to the fore. Peter Velits, 24 years of age. Chris Froome, 24 years of age. They're just youngsters, and this is the renaissance, I think, of the sport. I might have got wrong there. I tried to calculate Peter Velits. I think he's still only 23 years of age. He was born in 1985, so it really is a lot of young riders coming to the fore.
It is, and we saw the youngest rider in the race yesterday top the highest climb of the Tour de France, and that was John-Louis Augustin. And today we're going to see another young rider in his first Tour de France top the climb here of the Col de la Croix de Fer. These boys are not going to steal that bit of glory away from him, at least. 1 minute 14, he must be almost at the top. A minute 13 the gap to Peter Velits as he approaches the top of the Col de Croix de Fer, and this very select group is going to take the battle now to the Alpe.
Well, they're heading for the high spots here this afternoon in the Tour de France, Phil, and the next big thing on the agenda is going to be the Alpe d'Huez. We will have a showdown, and I think we're going to have a battle like we have never seen before on the slopes of the Alpe d'Huez, because there are not really very many people going to go to the foot of the Alpe d'Huez together. 1.7 kilometers to go to the summit for this young man, the current under-23 champion of the world. And strangely enough, he's being chased by a former under-23 champion of the world, Kurt Atle Arvesen of Norway.
That's absolutely right, yes. And it's going to be a long 1.5 kilometers for Peter Velits, because it's quite an unrelentless pace here. Looking down, that group is now select. Everybody else has been shed. These boys, I think, have got the measure of the pacemakers, and they're looking now to the next climb. Frank Schleck talking to brother Andy Schleck. Andy Schleck didn't hear what he said. He probably said, take a look, see who's at the back of this lot. I don't turn round. Sent Andy Schleck to the back of the pack there. And while he leaves them, now where's Carlos Sastre? He's the only other rider that Frank will be worried about. Here at the back now is Andy calling up for the bottles to take back to brother Frank.
Well, he's at a pretty steep part of the course here. This is 8.6%, and he's gone back to take on board drinks for his teammates. And they really are an incredible squad that Team CSC Saxo Bank have got here, Phil. It is one of the top teams in the world, and they've got some of the top men alongside there. Immediately, the team manager's there to pass on board drinks. It's so important on a day like this to have teammates, and that's what teammates are for. And that's why I think in 2006 we saw Floyd Landis blow to pieces in the Alps, because he was alone in the mountains. He had nobody able to go back to the car to take on board drinks for him and keep him hydrated.
Well, this man in the same situation now as he ploughs a lonely trail up towards the summit. We top out at 54 kilometers to go. He's creeping up towards that now. 54.5, I think it is, actually, as we go towards the summit. And now Andy has gone back. This is the return of Sandy Cassar here, who's climbed back up. So there must have been a slight easing of the pace. 1 kilometre to go now for the helmet here of Peter Velits as he forces himself into the front. A rider from Slovakia. That'll be a first time for that nation as well as he climbs up towards it. He's got a brother, by the way, too, Martin, who's on the same team. He didn't make the cut for the Tour de France, but he's not far off being as good as Peter, so he could be here next year. That'll be the next brothers attacking, like the Schlecks.
Well, Sandy Cassar here is pulling himself, Phil, inside out to stay in contact. You know, I feel a little bit sorry for Sandy Cassar. You know, he was second on the stage yesterday. That's the 4th time in his career he's been second on the stage of the Tour de France. But at least I suppose he did get a win last year.
But he's got the rhythm going nicely now as he heads up towards the summit of the Croix de Fer, the Cross of Iron. We found some men of iron here today. They haven't cracked anybody in that league group that has mattered to the Tour de France favourites. But this rider now, with the beauty of the Alps on his right shoulder, is heading up towards the summit as the victor of the Croix de Fer. Then it's going to be a free-for-all on the descent, and take it easy on the way down off this mountain into the valley. Then we arrive at Bourg d'Oisans, and then it's every man for himself.
It certainly is. There you can see the 1 kilometre to go to the summit. There's Christian van der Velde over on the left-hand side. Chris Froome riding at the front end of the main field.
There's the flag for Velits on the right there. Moncoutier still stays on the back, checks all the numbers off as they go behind him, but he doesn't go anywhere. Minute 10 seconds. The sun on the left side of the leading peloton in the Tour de France. No favourite has made a mistake today. They're going to fall in behind a rider from Slovakia, 23 years of age. Peter Velits is going to go over the top of this climb with about a minute and 11 in hand.
Well, they still look pretty cool, the Schleck brothers there. Andy Schleck in the white jersey winner of the Giro d'Italia last year and second overall. A little bit further up, though, Peter Velits is doing the ride of his life. We will always remember now, Phil, the name of Peter Velits, because this is a great performance this young man's putting in.
This is the narrow section of the Croix de Fer where they do allow the public to come, but not their cars. And so they've had to walk down from the summit to cheer these riders up. This is the vicious part of the Croix de Fer. And the half of the crowd will not know who on earth this rider is. They'll have been looking for a yellow jersey for somebody like Menchov or Cadel Evans. Instead, they're seeing a 23-year-old from Slovakia plough a lone furrow to the summit.
And look at the way he's pedaling, Phil. He wants to go over this climb in first place. He knows he's got a great chance of doing it because he doesn't want to get caught before the summit. He's still got himself a minute and 8 seconds advantage over those chasers, and he's only about 200 metres to go before he summits this massive big climb, and that's something he can put down on his resume for many years to come, that he led the Tour de France on a massive day. The queen of stages we're looking at here this afternoon after the Galibier, the Croix de Fer. We've still got on the menu to finish off with the Alpe d'Huez.
There's no sporting event in the world that attracts a crowd like this. No, the natural grandstands of the countryside of the world. And now we have Peter Velits. He's 1 hour and 31 minutes behind the race leader of the Tour de France. But for him, he's now on top of the Croix de Fer.
That's it. He's over the top, and now he can line up for the descent down towards the finish. And Phil, it is a long way down there. He picks up a newspaper very rapidly. Probably one of the best and cheapest insulators you can get. He puts that right in there to keep himself nice and cool, to make sure that he doesn't get too much of a chill coming in from the fast air that's going to rush past his body at 60 miles an hour on the descent.
The flags of Brittany, let's not forget, that's where the race started 3 weeks ago. And now he's on the way down. These boys are going to grab those newspapers, put them up underneath their racing jerseys, keep the wind out off their chest. They always fear bronchitis at this stage of the Tour de France. They wrap up for warmth on the descent. They don't need it once they get to the Alpe, because it's going to be the hottest day on the Tour de France on the Alpe for sure. Bernard Cole is out hunting for those King of the Mountain points. He'll sprint for second place, and that will consolidate his lead in that competition.
Well, it's important, I think, for Bernard Cole, Phil. Not only does he want to try and win this bike race overall, which he'll have to do with time when he goes towards the Alpe d'Huez, but winning the King of the Mountains classification for him was, in fact, one of his childhood dreams, and there he's got a few more points in the bag. So they're over the summit there, and they're looking at around about 1 minute and 10 seconds deficit on Peter Velits. They won't take too many risks, I don't think, on this descent now as they drop down towards the valley of Oison, which is where they now know they'll face a longer 10-kilometer flat section before they get to Bourg d'Oison, the town of Oison, which lays open to the start of the Alpe d'Huez. It's a pretty fast descent, this, Phil, to begin with. It goes down for around about 10 kilometers. It goes around a very beautiful lake, which we all know, and then drops down into the town of Alamont. And that's where it's going to be rather tough, and that's where they'll start to line themselves up for the start of the Alpe d'Huez.
So one man goes down with a lead of 69 seconds. There are 27 riders in the chase group, and now there really is. It's showdown on the Alpe. That's the next stop. Look at the lovely speed here. There's no chances being taken here now. There's two different types of rider here now. There's the aggressor, and there's those just pleased to be here as they sit at the back there on the freewheel down away from the Croix de Fer and onto the Alpe, which could well decide this year's Tour de France. But heck, Paul, we've said that for so long now. We don't know where this race will be decided.
Well, I think it won't be decided until the Champs-Élysées, the way things are working out at the moment. Of course, the individual time trial is going to be a very important day. It'll be important for Frank Schleck, Carlos Sastre and his brother Andy. And they know if they want to have any crack at winning the Tour, Phil, they've got to lead Cadel Evans by at least 2 to 2.5 minutes. And I think our helicopter pilot there is doing a great job.
Velits on his way down, dashing between the cars that weren't allowed to go any further. And as he picks his way down here, he's actually nibbled away. He's a very, very good descender, this young man, by the way. He might steal a couple of... He's already got 2 seconds back as he goes down. A little bit of a wobble there, but he's got his corner right. It's a good fast descent for the moment. These boys aren't actually racing down at all. They're waiting now for the final assault.
Well, I don't think they're going to take any risks, Phil. There's the French national champion just getting himself onto the back there. I reckon he's doing a great ride this afternoon. But Peter Velits, being on his own, Phil, will take a lot of risks on this descent, and I would expect him to have possibly a 2 to 2.5 minute advantage by the time he gets to the bottom.
Well, a long straight line. And there is the maillot jaune here. There's the results. Velits ahead of Cole, got another 18 points, and Arvidsson 16. Arvidsson not interested in the King of the Mountains. Cole is, though, and you know, he's still keeping those options open, Paul. He could win this race. He could also be the King of the Mountains. Chris Froome going over in 7th place. An outstanding ride by Chris. Kim Kirken over in 9th. Minute 14 the gap.
Check out those horses down there. That really is a wild mountain scene as we look at the horses following the main field down there.
Yes, it is. Horses of the Alps.
Well, it's a bit precarious going down here now. You can see the big springs and the waterfalls off to the left and the right. Well, down in the bottom of this valley, there is a massive dam called the Dam of the Grand Maison, of the Big House. And you can see it just down in the distance there. It's a massive reservoir which was built back in 1978. It contains a maximum capacity of 12 million cubic meters of water. It lies at an altitude of 5,577 feet, and it's again used as a hydroelectric source. There it is in the bottom. That's a fantastic view, isn't it? The Oison region here is made up of 6 separate valleys, and the one we're riding down through here is the valley that separates the climb of the Écrin on the left-hand side to the Grand Rousse Massif over on the right-hand side, and they're dominated by the high spots, which are the Pic Blanc and the Meije, which we saw a little bit earlier on. Peter Velits just trying to figure out what that thing is stuck to his back there. He's got something stuck onto his number here this afternoon. His number is 158, and he's got something stuck on there. I'm not quite sure what that is, and maybe it's a lucky charm for the day. You can see the wind battering the riders just over on the right-hand side. This is a pretty large group which has swelled in numbers. They were down as few as 15 to 20 riders just a little while back, but because of this long descent now, a lot of riders will manage to get themselves back into the main field on the descent. There is the big dam there. It's actually made from a rock fill. They blocked off the valley here in this part of the world, and it really is a great source of water and energy now. to see who's sitting on the front. It looks still Team CSC, happy to set the pacemaker. Still Kurt Adler-Arvidsson. Just to give you an idea of the time of the ascent there, it was 1 hour and 11 minutes for the yellow jersey group and 1 hour and 17 minutes for Peter Velits. He lost himself for around about 6 minutes on the ascent of that climb. So looking back, there's Christian van der Velde. A little bit further back, Chris Froome. Chris Froome has done a phenomenal ride here this afternoon. It's his first Tour de France, and he's in with some of the heads of state heading down now towards the Alpe d'Huez. Well, as we look down here over the dam of the Grand Maison, this is a massive dam just above the valley, where the valley of Oison, and that's where the riders are descending down to now for the start of the approach to the Alpe d'Huez.
Well, there's the beautiful slopes here as our helicopter seeks out the riders. That water must look very inviting to the men of the Tour de France as they head down to the valley once again. This lone leader, he has slightly increased his lead over the field. He's got 48 kilometers, or if you like, 30 miles to go. And Peter Velits is living through the greatest moment of his very young cycling career.
Well, he's done a phenomenal job here this afternoon. He's blown away the man that was with him a little bit earlier on, and you can see, in fact, the wind is really howling down here, Phil, as I think they're going to allow this rider a little bit of freedom to get off the front end of the main field. And this is Jérôme Pinault, who's had a pretty good start to the Tour de France here, and he's been in the top 10 on a number of occasions, and he probably feels, because he's, well, look at this. This is Fabian Cancellara at the back end of the group.
Getting back on. Yeah, Jérôme Pinault was third on the first stage, won by Valverde, so he was up in third overall for a while. But what has happened here over the ascent is riders who we should have written out of the script have just returned to the play as they now get back into that bunch, and it could be a reasonable sized bunch going down the valley into the little village of Bourg d'Oison, but there'll be no bunch after that because we start the climb.
Absolutely. As we look at these riders now, there will be a number of riders come back, and we'll have a massive charge to the foothills of the Alpe d'Huez. Bourg d'Oison is where the race starts, and Allemont is the small town at the bottom of this descent, and they face around about an 11-kilometer ride along the valley floor. So this is Jérôme Pinault, and he's chasing down Peter Velits. The gap between Peter Velits and the yellow jersey group is given to us at 1 minute and 3 seconds. So Jérôme Pinault is quite possibly halfway across the gap. And I have a feeling now that they're going to shut off the pacemaking for a little while here, but it's good to see that Fabian Cancellara has come back. Well done. Welcome back. That's pretty impressive to see that tap on the back there. So where have you been? Why did you drop off on that climb?
I don't know how he does it, Fabian Cancellara. I really don't. I mean, the leaders here have taken the slipstream of their teammates. The other boys have done the graft and the hard work. They go off the back and they climb back in. They just love being on television. That's all I can think of.
Well, I think it's important, and they know how important today is, Phil. They know it's an extremely important day in the whole story of this Tour de France, and that's why they've dragged themselves back into the race. They also know it's important to have teammates along the valley road. Here, I think this is a moment of respite, maybe for 10 minutes or so before we get to the valley floor, and then we'll start to see Fabian Cancellara probably whip up the pacemaking one more time, Phil, before he brings us into the Bourg d'Oison.
45.5 kilometers to go. They're ticking them off, aren't they? And we are getting no nearer decision. But of course, the last 14 kilometers will tell all. The times that we've gone to the bottom of the hill as a group, we've seen riders like Marco Pantani, as soon as the climb starts, accelerate. The same for people like Lance Armstrong have done it as well. And then they've battled the Alpe and they've opened up the time gaps. Frank Schleck himself has done it 2 years ago when he won there. So we just don't know. It's a matter of who is strongest wins, and it's as simple as that.
Well, the interesting thing about Frank Schleck winning on the Alpe d'Huez 2 years ago, Phil, he wasn't wearing the yellow jersey at the time, and he was a long way down in the overall classification, so he was given the freedom to get away into a breakaway. This is completely different, his approach to the Alpe d'Huez here this afternoon, because he has a lot more responsibility on his shoulders. But I wonder whether or not Carlos Sastre is going to leave everything to this final climb. He's been sitting at the back of the group, and that could be because he's feeling in great form here this afternoon, because for him, he's bet everything on this season as being a chance for him to win the Tour de France. In the past, we've seen situations, Phil, where Carlos Sastre has ridden all 3 Grand Tours. This year, he's dedicating himself to this one.
Well, we're over the big dam here. They'd probably use that climb if it was a triathlon, but not the Tour de France. There's nowhere to go when you get to the top. The Barrage de Grande Maison, which houses all the water which they trap here in the Alps. As the rides themselves continue this beautiful descent here, away from the Croix de Fer to the valley below. Look how that road winds down and down. There's the overall standings in the mountains.
Yes, well, that's starting to look like a pretty serious lead in the King of the Mountains for Bernard Cole. 115 points. And I think now he will start to feel just that little bit more comfortable. He's got to get himself a few more points, and I feel certain he will get himself a few points on the last climb of the day, which is double points on the summit of the Alpe d'Huez. So if he finishes off inside of the top 5, if he doesn't win the stage, then he will certainly have built probably an unassailable lead, because the rest of the climbs on the way up towards the finish in Paris are fairly small climbs. Fabian Cancellara, well, after the job of work that was done earlier on by Stuart O'Grady, this man has taken over with an unbelievable dedication to ripping everybody else to pieces. There is the descent down there, and down in the valley below there is the valley of Oison, and this is the Défilé de Maupas. Really is a real zigzag technical descent now here. It's a very safe descent though, because most of these corners are very easily maneuverable. That group has swelled up to around about 35 to 40 riders, and still a large number of riders in there from CSC, all waiting now for one thing, to see whether their top 3 men, Andy Schleck, Frank Schleck and Carlos Sastre, can rip the race to pieces on the ascent of the Alpe d'Huez. 55 seconds is the gap of Jérôme Pinault, who's trying to get himself across to Peter Velits. Velits is still riding along here like a Trojan. He lost himself 6 minutes on the ascent of that last climb, the Col de la Croix de Fer, and I'm sure he's going to lose himself for probably the same amount once we get to the Alpe d'Huez, because there's going to be a showdown, and those guys are going to go up that climb very quickly indeed. 1 minute and 28 seconds to the main field, and that's an indication that Peter Velits is taking a lot of risks on the descent, because he needs to, whereas in the main field they're actually having a slight break, a little bit of time out, I think, before they start to wind up on the valley road into the town of Bourg d'Oison. Just looking down here at Peter Velits. Amazing to think he's just 23 years of age. There are so many youngsters in the Tour de France this year, and they've all come to the top in what has been a great turnout. This is the Groupe Maillot Jaune, the group of the yellow jersey. It contains all of the pre-race favourites. There's not one of the riders in the top 10 in the overall classification has missed out on this selection.
Well, another man rejoins here, Paul, and this is the case. We've been getting them coming back one after another. Cancellara is here now.
It's Nicolas Vaugondy, the national champion of France, wearing the tricolore, a title that he won just before the start of the Tour de France. In fact, on the Sunday before the Tour de France started. And he's riding an excellent race here this afternoon. As far as I'm concerned, he's riding above and beyond his normal capabilities. And he's made the junction here at the back. The race situation is still off the front end of the main field. Peter Velits is leading, and here he is. He's got around about a 50-second advantage over Jérôme Pinault, and then 1 minute and 29 seconds back to the front end of the main field. And the yellow jersey group, Phil, with basically all of the overall leaders, all of the top 10 are in that leading group. In fact, I think probably all of the top 15 are in the leading group. The only person who might be missing is the 15th place rider, and that, of course, is Vincenzo Nibali, but he may well have been able to come back on the descent.
I'm not sure he's got back. I think he had a real bad packet towards the top of the Col de la Croix de Fer, but we'll find out as we get towards the bottom of this climb. There'll be a general regrouping, I think, as we head into the valley. Good chase this by Jérôme Pinault. He's making progress on Velits, and Velits could do with a hand right now. He's getting away from the peloton, at least for the moment. And an extra pair of legs as they get towards it. The situation, we've got 59, he's a minute behind now, Jérôme Pinault, and he's about 26 seconds ahead of the peloton.
There's just sitting on the back there is the champion of France, Vaugondy. You can see, Phil, I think they're having a bit of time out here, because it's been a tough ride for everybody this afternoon, especially Team CSC, who've really been dishing out the pain to the whole of the main field. And I think they want a little bit of respite before they start the climb in earnest. Once they get to the bottom of this descent, they've got around about 11 kilometers along a flat valley road, which takes them from the town of Allemont up to the town of Bourg-d'Oisans. And when you go around that left-hand bend to start the summit, to start to climb Alpe d'Huez, it looks like a wall right in front of you, the climb up to the first corner. And that corner is corner 21. And that is not a good thing to see, especially if you're having a hard day.
The elevation's written on every board on the corner. Every corner is named after a famous cyclist who's been on the Alpe. Well, 38 kilometers isn't very far, but unfortunately the Alpe is horrible, and it's about 24 kilometers from reaching the start of the final climb of the day. Again, as our helicopters wander around the Alps today, showing us the most stunning pictures, we find the leaders still on the way down, heading towards their final challenge.
And still, the big man from Switzerland comes to the front to set the pace-making. Fabien Cancellara, he's going to be asked to set the pace just a little bit longer. Jérôme Pinault is absolutely intent on trying to catch the lone leader, and this is the little difficult part of it. It's always awful when you're going downhill and you think it's a downhill run all the way into the valley below, and somehow or another the race manages to tip up like this, and it really hurts. It affects the rhythm as well, because your legs and muscles, Phil, get very cold after you've been going downhill for about 10 or 15 minutes. Then all of a sudden you've got to start to produce that effort again to get over this incline. Yeah,
it looks as though Jérôme Pinault's just got himself a little bit into a spot of bother now. He was going great, he was catching quickly, but now he seems to be struggling just a little bit. Mind you, this little false flat here is the same for the maillot jaune. Time gap's 45 seconds to Pinault, who is still pulling away. He's 40 seconds ahead of the peloton now. But I must say that the leader there, Velits, has made the most of the descent. He's added 21 seconds since he went over the top.
Yes, he will have taken an awful lot of risks, Phil, on the corners in the early part of the descent, while the main field behind, you can see actually mainly what they've been doing is taking it as easy as possible.
As we look there at the yellow jersey of Frank Schleck, again another stunning view across the barren parts. We're up at where the area now, nothing grows here, just the snow comes down. It leaves a gap of about 3.5 months, I think, without snow before we go back into the snowy season again.
It really is. This has got to have been one of the most beautiful days I think we've had in the Alps. It's absolutely clear, and the clear blue skies have really left us with some magnificent views.
This is Peter Velits. He's been out in front since he shed himself of Schumacher. But let's not forget, he's been out in front of the race since the 3rd kilometre today, Paul. It's absolutely amazing, really.
It certainly is amazing. It's been a long haul for him, and I think he'll be quite happy when he gets some assistance if Jérôme Pinault can bridge the last 40 or 45 seconds up to Peter Velits, because once the main field now, Phil, get themselves to the valley road, they'll start to line it out once again, and poor old Fabien Cancellara is going to be called upon again to set the tempo on the front end of this pack.
See, this is at one of those parts of the course where it's not a name climb, and the riders hit it, and there's a lot of people visibly struggling here. There's no fast tempo. This is quite a steep road, this, and they're just struggling to get it over with. A totally different tactic being played out. As the water shimmers, it looks nice. Jump in that, you'd freeze to death. I can tell you right now, it's freezing cold at this height, believe me.
No, it certainly is, as you can see, and that's where we're heading to. And just around the corner from the valley of Oisans will be the town of Bourg-d'Oisans, and then we'll start with that massive ascent, 14 kilometers and 21 switchback corners. One of the most famous climbs in the sport of professional cycling, and definitely one of the famous mythical climbs of the Tour de France. 158 here is Peter Velits, and he knows now that he's leading Jérôme Pinault by around about 25 seconds. So on this difficult part of the supposed descent, they've thrown in a bit of an ascent, and that, I think, is turning to the advantage of Jérôme Pinault, who's got slightly better legs than the man in front of him. But after all, young Peter Velits at 23, he's actually been leading this race since kilometre 3 on what is one of the longer stages of the Tour de France this year. fact, the last time check came through, it took 21 seconds, and it's 37 kilometers to go to the finish. And because of the descent, Team CSC have received some reinforcements. And in fact, Fabian Cancellara has come back here, and it looks to as if it's quite possible that Vladimir Gustov did as well.
Well, as we look at these riders, they're going down to the valley now. It's a long drop. Paul Sherwin here. Paul, you know exactly the route. You felt the pain.
I felt the pain all the way this afternoon, because once you go over the Col de la Croix de Fer, it's down into the valley road, around about 10 or 11 kilometers of flat, and that flat for these guys in the main field is going to be led up really at full pace. And then it's a question of every man for himself. Throw out the sandbags, inflate the hot air balloons, and hope it's going to take you up to the summit of the Alpe d'Huez. And anybody, Phil, today who's having a bad day, on a day when CSC have ripped the race to pieces, is going to lose huge chunks of time.
Well, as far as the favourites are concerned, who is having a bad day? Because it looks to me as though Denny Menchov, Christian van der Velde, Bernard Cole, the principal players against CSC, are feeling no pain at all right now. Well, they're all feeling pain, but you know what I mean.
Well, a little bit of respite, I suppose. The pain level has gone down to a slightly lower level, and that will increase once we get to the Alpe d'Huez. And look at that. It really is. This has been a magical view here this afternoon. The waterfalls, the lakes, the mountains, the glaciers. I think we've seen it all this afternoon, and it's nice to know that for the moment, all of the main heads of state, the men in the top 6 positions in the overall classification field, they're all in the same group at 1 minute and 43 seconds.
35.5 kilometers to go for the leader, or wouldn't it be lovely if he won the stage? Unfortunately, the Tour doesn't think that way. This is the chase here. This is Jerome Pino still in no man's land, trying to reach the lone leader, Peter Vellet. If only he could get to him, the pair of them might have a better chance of escape. But in any case, Peter Vellet is now nudged out. He went over the top 1 minute and 9 ahead. He's now 1 minute and 45 ahead. And primarily the leaders, because all of the favourites are in that chase group with the yellow jersey, have eased back now because it's showdown on the Alpe. It's as simple as that.
Well, they've slowed down a fraction, I think, just to give them a moment of recovery before they launch all of their offensives on the final climb of the day. Casting my mind back, I remember a day when a team called T-Mobile, or Telecom at the time, rode like Team CSC have ridden today. They tried to smash a Lance Armstrong.
Yeah.
And it didn't work in the right way for them. It didn't work as they'd expected it to. This is the same kind of tactic that Team CSC have adopted here this afternoon. They've dominated the race. They've ripped it to pieces. They've tried to wring the neck of everyone in the main field. And I wonder now whether the 2 men at the top, Carlos Sastre and Frank Schleck, have got what it takes to pay back their teammates.
We are going to find out, but we're not going to find out until we get onto the climb of the Alpe right now.
Well, they've still got a couple more kilometers, maybe around about 10 kilometers till they get down to the valley floor. The valley floor is going to be the small town of Allemont, and then they've got 11 kilometers along the flat until they come into Bourg d'Oisans at 14 kilometers to go to the summit.
Yes.
Two chasers flipping between the two. This is Pinot. Just having a quick look where the computer telling me it's 10 seconds, but around these corners it's very difficult to spot whether or not he's still surviving. This might be a good move for the young man Peter Velits. There's a referee pulling over to the right hand side of the road, so I would think next time the road straightens up, Phil, we're probably very likely to see right in front Peter Velits. That's a motorbike outrider, so Velits, I think, probably will be quite happy to get some reinforcements and some help.
He's done well. It's been a good chase by Jerome Pino. He's got in rapidly here. He's really put the hammer down on this descent. And as I say, I think Velits could do with a hand right now. 5 seconds is the gap, so there he is, just there in front of the motorbike. Here comes help. And let's hope he doesn't try to do something silly and hit Velits, literally, not literally, but attack him and go away straight away. I don't think that'll be a good idea.
Well, that wouldn't be the right tactic now, because we've got a long section. Once they get into Allemont, which is around about 6 kilometers away from here, they've got an 11-kilometer ride along the valley floor. And I would think Jérôme Pinot would like some help and assistance from the young Peter Velits. And Velits, still the way he's riding, Phil, seems to be reasonably strong.
And as we watch it here, it's interesting to know, Paul, that Damiano Cunego got himself back into that chase group at some stage. So too did Dmitry Fofanov and Tadeusz Valjevec. So I think all of the interesting riders in the Tour are now in that break. Needless to say, David Moncoutier is there. He sat at the back. He's still there. And, of course, Christian van der Velde, the American. So that's good news for those guys.
Well, we will have a sorting out on the Alpe d'Huez, and finally we'll get a chance to see who has survived the best on a day when Team CSC has tried to kick the guts out of everyone in the bike race. Jérôme Pinot here has taken advantage of not being a highly placed rider in the overall classification, and he decided to come across the gap. He was given his freedom because nobody really wanted to chase him down, but it's a good move by the rider from Bouygues Telecom, and he's just about to make the junction with the rider who has been in the lead since the 3rd kilometre. And because of this daredevil descent by both of these riders, from a minute at the top, they're now looking at a 2-minute advantage.
Yeah, and he says, come on, stay with me, let's go.
Well, that's a good piece of serious professionalism there, and a nice sporting gesture as well. And I know Pinot, as an experienced bike rider who's been around for quite a while, Phil, he knows he needs the assistance of this youngster along the valley floor.
Well, it must feel good to get some drafting there behind Jérôme Pinot. We'll not expect him to do much just yet. It's been a hard chase, and he knows what the state he must be in, because we are 30 kilometres from the finish of a 210-kilometre stage. That means he's been in front now, take off the 3 for 167 kilometres, Peter Velits.
Well, translate that into old money, Phil. That's more than 103 miles of racing at the front end of the race, and still he's got 18 miles to go.
But that's all, but unfortunately the Alpe ahead.
So for a little while there, Peter Velits can get a little bit of respite, sitting in the slipstream of the man who's just joined him, Jérôme Pinot of France. While the group of Maillot Jaune are not too concerned at the moment. I don't think they'll get themselves organised until they get down into the valley town of Alemont. The city of the town of Alemont was quite an active mining town way back in the era of Louis XIII and Louis XIV. And in fact, there were a couple of royal foundries in that town when, in fact, they smelted not only silver and lead, but also copper, which they found in the mountains around here. Vaumondi, the red, white and blue of France, just sitting on the back. We were expecting a visit to the race yesterday of the French president, Nicolas Sarkozy, but he had to cancel at the last minute because of his rather heavy agenda, and it was all set up for him to be there and follow the race over the last climb of the day, the Col de la Bonnette Restefond. And unfortunately he wasn't able to make it. But he is a great supporter and a great follower of the Tour de France, and maybe he'll just have to put it off until next season. That's where we're going to. Those are the famed corners of the Alpe d'Huez, Phil. 21 corners in all, from the valley floor and Bourg d'Oisans to the Alpe d'Huez at the top. It's great from this altitude. It's not so great when you've got to try and ride up it in around about 35 minutes.
16 miles of intestine lying on the side of a mountain. Just look at it. Well, winds its way up to the top through the village of Huez. Keeps on going. There's no other climb like this in France. First climbed in 1952 by Fausto Coppi. He won here. We didn't come back for more than 20 years. Now it's a regular on the Tour de France. And there at the top, and it was about 2 houses up there when we first came up here in the old days, but now, of course, it's a total village.
It's scary when you look at it like that, and bear in mind that after dragging their bodies over a stage of 210 kilometres, they've still got 14 kilometres to go uphill to the finish. Arm up there for Jérôme Pinot, calling for the final drink possibly before he starts the ascent of this last climb of the day. 17 kilometres to go, 1:28. Team manager comes up alongside. A little bit of a chat, a word of encouragement, saying you've got to keep going like this, but bear in mind that on the front of the main field, Team CSC are ripping the race to pieces. That's Didier Rousse in the team car there. He's a former bike rider in the Tour de France himself. He was a great rider. He rode for Bouygues Telecom for quite a while. This is the sprint at Bourg d'Oisans. 1 kilometre to the sprint. But these riders are not too concerned at all about that. 15.5 kilometres to go to the finish. And from the sprint, around about 1 kilometre to the start of the climb. Just trying to see which riders are there from Team CSC. And there is Bernard Cole, Alejandro Valverde. There is Cadel Evans in the red jersey. There in the orange is Denny Menchoff. A little bit further back, Cyril Dessel. Kim Kirken is there as well for Team Colombia. In the white jersey there is the Garmin Chipotle rider, Christian van der Velde. Kurt Adler-Arvidsson here is absolutely burying himself for the team. Right behind him is big Fabian Cancellara. Then it's Vladimir Gustov. Then the Schleck brothers, 1 and 2, Andy and Frank. And right on their wheel is Carlos Sastre. Well, the official time gap they're giving is 1:15, and there's the quick correction there as we look at the two leaders. They're in the town now. This town is absolutely full of people, and they've come here to see one thing, the Tour de France, and to see today if we can finally decide who is going to win this bike race. It's very rare to come to the Tour de France and on stage at 17 have the first 4 riders only separated by 49 seconds. Over the past few mountain stages, instead of stretching the time gaps apart, the race has had the effect of bringing it all back together. Even Denny Menchoff is not too far away at 1 minute and 13 seconds, and he lost 30 seconds yesterday on the downhill section of the course.
Well, as the Alp continues along now, we're already as we get into the town of Bourg d'Oisans now. 66 seconds the two leaders have as they start and will shortly turn onto the climb of the Alp. 15 kilometres. We start the Alp in a minute, Paul, that we get a lead with 2 riders of only 63 seconds. It's all going to happen in the next couple of kilometres.
Well, it certainly is, and look at the job of work that Team CSC are still doing on the front end of the main field. Those riders who were dropped on the Croix de Fer, they came down on the descent, and now once again, Phil, as they go through the sprint point here, they are sacrificing themselves for the 3 leaders. The 3 leaders are Frank Schleck, Andy Schleck and Carlos Sastre, but they haven't done anything to get rid of the men who challenge them, like Menchoff, like Evans, like Van der Velde, Kim Kirken, Valverde, Sammy Sanchez. They are all still in this group, but I don't think after the first kilometre we'll have a big group left.
Well, this is the start of the climb just here now. There's a massive, massive crowd. It lines all the way to the first start of the 21 corners to heaven, 14.4 kilometres. Can you imagine how those riders feel in the chase now, knowing that if their body responds in the way they hope, they could win the Tour de France by the end of this day. That's the sprint point. Nobody really cares. It means absolutely nothing at this stage of the race.
Well, just swinging around. Very shortly they're going to make the left-hand turn, and when you make that left-hand turn, Phil, you see this horrible black wall of tarmac in front of you, and that is the first incline of the Alpe d'Huez. Everybody is here. There's the indication, 13.8 kilometres to go to the summit, and very shortly they'll make that left-hand sweep, which will show them that black wall in front of them, and they'll probably go, oh my gosh.
These people have camped here for a week. It used to be a day. Then when the Alp caught on, it was 2 days. Now, if you're not here for a week, you won't get the spots because they will not give them to you. They have come down here. They've waited patiently. All the signs are in English here now because so many nations are watching this race who speaks that language. There's the peloton. They're about to swing on to the Alp now. And how much longer can CSC keep their domestiques on the front?
Scuttling up the outside there, I noticed Denny Menchoff and his team trying to place him in the ideal position for the start of the climb. You can see the big, tall figure as well of Johan van Sommeren. He is reported present and correct for Cadel Evans. Swinging off there, Kurt Adler-Arvidsson says goodbye, friends, as Jérôme Pinot leaves Peter Velits behind. But behind them, Phil, at only 51 seconds, is the front end of the main field.
Well, this is all for everyone now. The man that can knock the other one out will win the Tour de France. Cadel Evans knows his best chance is to concede no time, but he can afford to concede a little bit. Christian van der Velde, he looks good today, but he needs to gain time. Jérôme Pinot has cracked here, 50 seconds and 13.4 kilometres. There's no little ease into the Alp. It bites you straight away. It's steep, it's hard.
And there is no pardoning either, because the Alp never gets easy. There's no flat part to the Alp, as we can see now the face here of Vladimir Gustov. He's going to give everything he can finally to try and set his men up. I have to say that Andy Schleck looks very comfortable there. Carlos Sastre knows
Sastre
he has to go.
And Sastre has got Menchov on his back wheel. Here comes the kicks from the stars now. This is the moment of truth as the others drop away. Lawrence Ten Dam drops off, but his team leader is there. Menchov is marking Sastre. Sastre needs big time. He's gone from the bottom.
Well, he knew he had to do this. That was the only thing that Carlos Sastre could do. But look, Phil, how calm Denny Menchov looks here this afternoon. And behind, it's a little bit of tactical work going on for Team CSC, because they're saying,
Evans,
if you want to move, you've got to chase him down. And Cadel Evans knows that. Moving upside the outside, Johan van Summeren, Phil, all of a sudden has found something special to go up there and help his leader.
Well, Sastre needs time. He's got to go. He's gone early. Denny Menchov had him marked well. He's gone with him. But Cadel Evans, helped by a teammate who cannot stay with him very long. Damiano Cunigo's had enough. He's gone off the back. Cyril Dessel, the winner yesterday, he's just been blown away. George Hincapie, Kim Kirken rather, is struggling under the pressure. They must have known the pace would go as immediately this climb started. They've caught Sastre back. First attack has failed.
Well, again he goes. Carlos Sastre's got something in his legs here this afternoon. He wants to go alone, Phil. He does not want anyone on his back wheel, and Menchov is looking with a much bigger gear to try and pull Carlos Sastre back in.
Well, Menchov read the first one, but when you are a pure climber, you can do what others can't do. You can relax and accelerate for a second time.
You can go and you can go again, and that's exactly what Carlos Sastre has done. This is Roman Kreuziger. He's getting left out of the back end of the main field, but he's a young star too. And now alone at the front, going over and past Jérôme Pinault, is Carlos Sastre, who is climbing, Phil, like a real pure climber this afternoon.
Well, he is the man with the stamina. He's had a third-place finish in the Tour de France the year that Floyd Landis was disqualified. He's had a fourth-place finish. Sastre now needs 49 seconds to pull on the jersey of his teammate, Frank Schleck. There's no reaction from Schleck now. Mario Ertz is the rider on the front, doing what he can for Evans as long as he can.
Well, Carlos Sastre knows, Phil, that if he wants to get his one chance at a shot at winning the Tour de France here this afternoon, he's got to get time. But he doesn't have to get seconds, he has to get minutes. And Mario Ertz there is doing the greatest job I've seen him do in the Tour de France for some time as he sets the tempo on the front. But they're all now leaving it up to the man who they're a bit concerned about, the man who was scary on Prato Novoso, the man who leads the King of the Mountains classification, Bernard Cole. But he doesn't have it here this afternoon. He swings off and says to Frank Schleck, you do it. Schleck says, I'm not chasing, that's my man in front.
Well, this is around the point where Lance Armstrong said goodbye to Jan Ullrich and then continued to the top. But look at this now. Is this David Moncoutier, is number 188 at the back to the front here as the riders crack. Jérôme Pinault is now been dropped here. Sastre knows he's made his move. Now can he hold it? It's an awful long way to the top and it never ever levels out.
Well, a lot of riders getting help here from moves like this move by David Moncoutier. He's on his last warning with his team. If he doesn't do something in this Tour de France, his contract will not be renewed. Now he's trying to ride himself into the bike race. Here's young Chris Froome going backwards, but I tell you what, he's learned an awful lot today, Phil, about himself as Mario Ertz disappears from the front of the race. Menchov, this...
No, it's not It is Menchov, yes, Menchov, I thought it was struggling. A 2. Well, that's caught Denny Menchov. The man we thought might be holding something back is holding nothing back. He has blown on the Alp. Now the battle is strengthening. Christian van der Velde is still in that group there, while Sastre makes his bid. Yes, he is only 49 seconds off yellow, but he needs much more than that for Cadel Evans not to win the Tour, because Cadel will annihilate him in the time trial by anything up to 90 seconds.
Well, you can see now Bernard Cole looking over his shoulder. Come on, come and help me. But on his shoulders, he's got the two Schleck brothers. They're just sitting, Phil, in the wings and waiting. They are hoping that their man, Carlos Sastre, has got the ability today to pull out minutes, not seconds, over Cadel Evans and the other favourites. David Moncoutier is back in the group, but this now is a group of the heads of state. Still, Christian van der Velde is there. Still, Cadel Evans is there. And Evans, Phil, I think now is looking to make the move.
Well, Evans looks across here now because Bernard Cole, his head always nodding in this straight side motion, has got to the front here. Cyril Dessel looks as though he's back in this race at the moment. And Cadel Evans looking to climb now, locked in. He's marking the yellow jersey of Frank Schleck. He better watch out where Bernard Cole goes as well.
Well, Bernard Cole is being put into a position today that if he wants to win this bike race, Phil, he's going to have to do something special. He dreamed about getting himself the yellow jersey on Prato Nervoso. Now he's got the polka dot jersey on his shoulders, setting a false tempo now, and it looks
an attack.
Yeah, that's AG2R going off the front of the group.
Well, AG2, is this Dessel or Efekim? I can never recognise these two. As they start the attack here for AG2R, there'll have to be a reaction, but not quite so sinister, as they must chase back the race leader.
Well, I tell you one thing, the Schleck brothers are all over the front end of this group, Phil, and they are controlling it somewhat dangerously. And I have a feeling if anyone was to come back to Carlos Sastre, the Schleck brothers are going to whack this group very hard indeed.
And look at Christian van der Velde, the American who came here really as leader of his team, but nobody really thought he would challenge for a podium finish. He's been challenging ever since the race started. It's Vladimir Efekim, yes, who's in that group. The group consists of Cadel Evans, Andy Schleck, Frank Schleck, Valverde, Efekim, Bernard Cole, Christian van der Velde. The heads of this year's Tour de France are now fighting it out on the Alp. And it could be the winner tonight, will be the winner in Paris. And the yellow's gone. And Cadel Evans immediately reacts.
Well, Cadel Evans, he knows he has to keep a very close eye on Frank Schleck here this afternoon. Look at this. Evans has finally taken the race by the horns here, Phil. He's decided, right, guys, I'm going to show you why I am the #1 favourite before the start of the Tour de France, because I will dominate the pace here. But immediately, it's Bernard Cole comes to the front again.
For me, the danger is Cole. I think Schleck is in difficulty. That should have worked for Frank, and it didn't do so. I'd be very worried now, and Andy Schleck is also at the back. Is he planning to launch an attack as well? A great move by Sastre. He had no choice. He had to go at the bottom. He needs a win by 2 minutes if he's got a chance of winning the Tour. That's what we think.
That's what we think, and I'm sure that's what Cadel Evans thinks as well. The great thing about Carlos Sastre, Phil, is he is a magical climber. Sitting at the back here, though, is
Chris Froome's coming back up here.
He's coming back with Denny Menchoff. He's pulling himself back into the bike race here this afternoon.
Well, just looking here at Carlos Sastre, the clock is saying he's nudged out 22 seconds. He's 49 seconds, so he's 27 seconds off yellow. Make that 25 seconds off yellow. This is Bernard Cole. They've never had an Austrian rider like this. Andy's going. Andy's turned. Cadel has spotted him, and he's on him straight away. But Andy just wanted the back wheel of Cole.
He's just watching, making sure that nobody goes. They're trying to protect the position of Carlos Sastre here this afternoon. Look there at Alejandro Valverde, looking pretty comfortable in this group. Team CSC have laid the foundations here this afternoon. What they need to know is how much energy have the other guys got the group. And Efekim is about to make a move.
A 1:13 span of the top 5 in the Tour de France as Vladimir Efekim goes. He may not be quite so heavily marked by Cadel, but Andy has decided to shoot across that gap and join Efekim on the attack. Now, Andy Schleck himself is 9 minutes behind. There's no reason for Cadel Evans to chase him down.
Yeah, but I tell you one thing, one man who was responding to that was a certain rider from the United States, Christian van der Velde, has gone right across that gap, and I think van der Velde has decided to go straight over the top of them.
Van der Velde said this morning, if he arrives at the Alp and feels good, he will attack. He needs a little bit of time, and then in the time trial, he knows he will have the advantage along with Evans. And Andy Schleck is up there with him right now. I think Frank Schleck is in trouble.
Well, Frank Schleck is sitting there back on the wheel of Cadel Evans, as he was on the climb a couple of days ago to Prato Nervoso, when he gave the advantage to his brother and he gave his advantage to Carlos Sastre. Trying to keep himself in the bike race, though, number 131, Denny Menchoff, Phil. He looked so strong at the bottom of the climb, but that's the amazing thing about Alpe d'Huez. It is an unforgiving climb. You make one effort too many, and then you have to pay for it.
Frank Schleck, his face never, ever looks as though he's in trouble. I've never seen him appear to suffer, and yet I'm not so sure he can lift his pace here. Evans is marking Valverde at the moment. Andy's come back and had a chat with brother Frank and probably said, what do you feel like? because they need to know the answers here. Cadell has his hands full. They're hitting him at every side. This is the rider I would worry about, Paul, Bernard Cole. Cadell knows he can beat him in the time trial, but he won't want to give him much.
He doesn't want to give him too much at all, and the amazing thing about Bernard Cole is he'll keep going and going. And as soon as he saw the impetus going out of that group, he decided to accelerate. But look at the way this man is pedaling here. Carlos Sastre is now inside of 10 kilometers to go. 6 miles of climbing. Again, he's riding a long solo effort. He needs more than 28 seconds, Phil. I've got to tell you that. He needs an awful lot more, maybe 2 minutes. And to get 2 minutes on the final climb is not an easy call.
I've never, ever seen Carlos Sastre race as well as this. Let me quickly tell you his finishes in the Tour de France. In 2001, 20th. 2002, 10th. 2003, 9th. 2004, 8th. He dropped out a little bit in 05, 21st. 2006 he was 3rd. Last year he finished 4th. There's only one place he wants, it is the win, and this is his last chance. He needs 2 minutes to win the Tour.
He's got to get that, but it's awfully difficult on the final climb of the day to do that. And the only chance he'll get that is if the other guys, Phil, start to crack or start to watch each other. And still, Bernard Cole knows that. He's not letting anybody get off the front end, because if he loses time today on somebody like Carlos Sastre, he could be losing a podium position.
There's so many riders now being hit from all sides, but I have to say, what a wonderful Tour de France. Frank Schleck here has gone to the front. I do not believe he's got it. He's lassoed Christian van der Velde and put him back. Evans has climbed through now. He's got Bernard Cole. At the moment, things are good for the Australian, I think, because Sastre's only got 34 seconds. But by the same token, Paul, and an attack by Schleck. Was Schleck kidding us all here? There's a reaction from Cole. This is a huge effort by Schleck. He looks back, you know. I'm not sure he can ram this one home. Cadell Evans doesn't look like a man in trouble.
Neither does Bernard Cole, who keeps dragging himself back. But I think the Schleck brothers, Phil, are playing with this group a little bit. They're launching these attacks to take the impetus out of the organisation of any chase behind Carlos Sastre. And when they slow down, it's going to give advantage to Sastre. And look at that, 40 seconds. Valverde now says, OK,
he's looking for 3 minutes and 23 seconds, and we thought he'd written himself out in the Pyrenees. The champion of Spain has got the Schlecks on his wheel, and he split him away from Cadell Evans and Bernard Cole.
Well, that was a big move, and now they're going to put Cadell Evans on the defensive. Cadell Evans is on the wheel of Bernard Cole, and he knows he's got to move.
This is the effort. Look at the face of Andy.
Andy Schleck looks over and says, bro, let's go.
Well, this is it now. They've got the gap. They've broken the elastic. Evans is on his own. He's got to get him up there. He's followed by Christian van der Velde. He's followed by Bernard Cole. And this is a huge effort. Now, one thing about Cadell Evans is he's an absolute fighter.
He will fight. He'll try and stay in the bike race here this afternoon. Alejandro Valverde set that up.
Coming back.
Down
He's
and
coming back.
It's all down, though, Phil, by Cadell Evans sitting on the wheel of van der Velde. Van der Velde is riding a superb Alpe d'Huez here this afternoon. And Bernard Cole is the man now put into difficulty. Well, I have to say that's his own fault.
It is every man for himself here. I'm not sure, and you can never prove it, but I reckon Valverde's got a little deal going with the boys from Luxembourg. Now they're still talking, and that's not allowed, but of course, who cares? This is the Tour de France. We're talking about the race win today. 9.1 kilometers to go. Schleck is trying, Andy that is, trying to get the spectators out the middle of the breakaway here. Now, Valverde carries on. Andy Schleck has not got it, I'll tell you right now. And Cadell is a little bit slow to respond, but still looks good.
Well, Cadell doesn't have that acceleration on the slopes of a climb like this, Phil. What he does is he allows somebody to accelerate like a climber, then he slowly drags himself back up to make the contact, because it's like the other guys have got petrol engines and he's got a massive, great big diesel engine. But once he gets it up to speed, it's very difficult to slow him down.
We're about 17 minutes away from the end of the stage. How much time can you lose? And that's what Cadell Evans will be reckoning now. Carlos Sastre, they stopped giving us a time check there. He must be close to his race lead, though, of 49 seconds. He's got 23 of them just now. Those counter-attacks by his own teammates is damaging Sastre's lead.
Yes, but it may well pay into his advantage down towards the end, because what these accelerations and decelerations will do, will take the will of the other guys in this group away from chasing down. Look at Bernard Cole. He was the man who was doing most of the pacemaking on the front before to try and pull back the breakaways. Now he's been put onto the defensive.
Well, there is the select group, and Stefan Schumacher has somehow got himself in there, the oldest man in the race at 38, riding with the elite of the Tour de France.
Well, now there's a move, and talking about Stefan Schumacher, just immediately he must have heard that because he goes straight over the top, but he's immediately covered by Andy Schleck. Andy Schleck says, sorry, mate, nobody's going anywhere here this afternoon. Bernard Cole is in second position. Frank Schleck in the yellow jersey. Van der Velde looks phenomenal there in the white jersey with the blue sleeves, and again it's in a movement here by Schumacher, the oldest man in the bike race. He comes up to the front and thinks, well, they don't really know who I am, so they may well give me a chance to move off the front end of this group. Well, this is a great acceleration, and as you can see, they're going round the corners on the outside where the corners are not quite as steep, and it allows you to keep the tempo going. Sammy Sanchez dragging himself back onto the tail of this group.
Well, we still see here the man who's the oldest rider in the race here, Stefan Schumacher. This is Valjevic on the back, so he's now lost ground. Denny Menchov just trying to hold those yellow cars up ahead in sight, but he's losing yet again more time as Andy Schleck tries to again put a nail in the coffin of Cadel Evans and Bernard Cole.
Well, I'm not really sure why Cole keeps chasing across after these groups, Phil, but he's got himself the gap this afternoon. Andy Schleck looks the most comfortable to me of all of the riders in this group because he is doing the work. He's marking all of the moves. Again, Van der Velde's got the legs to come across this gap, and he knows Frank Schleck very well. Let's not forget they used to be teammates on CSC together.
Well, they text each other after Frank got the yellow jersey, but they both want the yellow jersey. They're not friends now. Cole has struggled up behind Andy. These boys are all on the limit of their ability, and they're almost equal. It's all a question as to who can put the attack in when the others are just feeling a bit rough.
Team manager of CSC charging across the gap. Have a quick look at that time gap there, Phil. 55 seconds. The fact that these guys keep attacking and slowing down means they're actually playing into the hands of Carlos Sastre, who's riding at his own sensible pace all of the time. Every time they attack in this group, they eat into his lead, but then they slow down too much and they give the advantage to Carlos Sastre.
Carlos Sastre is now the race leader of the Tour de France on the road. If he gets to the top, he'd be the 7th leader of this extraordinary event. The record, by the way, is 8 different leaders. And there he is now being cheered all the way to the Maillot Jaune. But even if he pulls it on tonight, he won't have enough time to keep it if it stays at 57 seconds.
No, it's going to be a little bit too short for him. He's looking for at least another 1.5 minutes on today's stage, Phil, because let's not forget he starts the day 49 seconds behind his teammate, but he's also 41 seconds behind Cadel Evans in the overall classification. So he needs to start the time trial with at least 2 minutes lead. And again, there's another move coming from AG2R.
Well, this is incredible. The way these guys push it home, I really don't know. I think this is Valjevic who's gone now. And again, he just creates a ricochet reaction from these boys.
But Andy Schleck, every time, Phil, is the policeman. And I tell you what, Denny Menchov is slowly but surely pulling himself back into this group. And that's an indication that with these accelerations and decelerations, their average speed is not as great as that of Carlos Sastre. There, you can just spot...
Christian Van der Velde is going to give it a go. He's going to go. He needs a little bit of time to fight back into a podium position here. He lost time yesterday when he crashed on the way off the bonnet, and that's why Andy Schleck has marked Christian Van der Velde and taken brother Frank back to the front.
Well, Cadel Evans on the wheel there of Alejandro Valverde. The Schleck brothers, I have to say, Phil, I don't think they're in difficulty. Today, they're chasing all of the moves, giving the advantage to their man, Carlos Sastre. Dragging his way back into this race is Bernard Cole. He spent a lot of energy in the early part of the climb. I think wasting energy chasing down these little accelerations, and now he's seriously been put on the defensive. Sammy Sanchez comes back, Stefan Schumacher comes back, and I think very shortly Denny Menchov will come back.
Well, he'll do a darn good ride if he gets back here, the way they're hitting each other. Look at the face of Van der Velde. He's almost licking his lips on Alpe d'Huez as he drags Frank. I don't agree with you, Paul. I think Frank Schleck's on the limit of his ability today. And you're right, Denny Menchov is going to get in amongst it here. They'll have to make room for him. The Russian rider is still a threat. One gets the feeling this Tour de France, by the time we get to Paris, we'll still be talking seconds.
I think you're absolutely right there, but Carlos Sastre is doing a phenomenal ride. You know, he's sat in the wings, he's waited and breathed this particular stage here this afternoon. He's known that this was important. Schleck is going again.
Well, they're going to have to keep on answering it as best they can, because Frank Schleck has got no acceleration there. He really hasn't, and Cadel Evans is just marking them. He's not putting in any attacks.
I tell you what, Phil, these little accelerations and decelerations by the Schleck brothers are taking the impetus away from the group. They're disorganizing it in a very clever manner, because everyone has to chase them down. You can't let Schleck go because he's the yellow jersey. You daren't let Andy Schleck go because he's got incredible legs on the slopes of this climb. Evans now is slowing down, and that's going to give you, the next time we get a time check, possibly a 1.5 minutes
at the moment,
Carlos
it's
Sastre.
77 seconds, 1 minute 17 seconds, advantage Sastre. I take my hat off to him. He had to attack at the bottom, and he didn't waste any time in doing it. He hit him hard, and he's got clear. He took Menchov, remember, went back, then went alone. Menchov rejoins these 10 boys.
That tells me that there's no chase organised in this group. These guys are all over the road, and if Cadel Evans...
They should have done this, Schleck. Stop that business of attacking. Let the leader go.
That is why they attacked, to break down the rhythm, to break the will of the riders in this group, and that's why nobody wants to chase. Cadel Evans really now should think about getting to the front and taking the stranglehold. It's Tadej Valjavec there on the front who's doing the pacemaking, but I'm not sure he's got the big engine to take down Carlos Sastre.
Well, Cole has got to remember too, he can't time trial either so well, and he needs time on Cadel Evans, and he's still in this group. He's also seeing a man leapfrog him in the overall classification. There's 11 riders here now at the chase. As we go to the front, the gap is shot up. 1 minute 27 now. If he gets 2 minutes, he could win the Tour de France, and that's what he's looking for. He won't win it today, of course. He's got to go to the time trial. 6.4 kilometres to the finish. 6.3. Sastre could be pulling off the ride of the Tour here.
Well, I'm surprised that there's no organised chase behind, but I'm pretty certain that it's the fact that the two Schleck brothers, Phil, have been going left and right after all of these moves has discouraged the riders in this group. It's taken the will to chase away from them. Let's not forget, Team CSC assassinated all of these riders this afternoon. Menchov will be happy with the fact that the pace has come down a fraction, because he's pulled himself back into the fold.
Well, Sanchez has got himself back in here, as well as Menchov. They've clawed the way back, an indication that the pace has slowed a little bit. As we're heading towards 6 kilometres to go now, they're saying it's 1.5 minutes the lead of Carlos Sastre. And there will have to be a reaction here, probably in the last 2 or 3 kilometres. Evans has got to try and go, so too is Cole.
Well, it's interesting to know that the man who's doing the pacemaking on the front is the oldest man in the bike race. It's Stefan Schumacher from AG2R, and he's brought it down to 1 minute and 25 seconds. AG2R are riding a phenomenal race here this afternoon, but I wonder if the pace is not going to be high enough. We're inside now of 6 kilometres to go to the front, and the main heads of state, Phil, are not doing the chasing. It's one of the lesser teams in the Tour who are doing the chasing. It's AG2R. They're trying to pull their man, Tadej Valjavec, back, but he's only in 10th place in the overall classification.
Well, that's the strange thing about the Tour de France now, because the leaders are so close here. This man is shortly going to see the summit. It'll still be a long way away, but at least he'll see it as he comes round the village of Huez. Round the corner we always call the Dutch corner, where so many Dutchmen have ridden to victory on the Tour de France. But Sastre today really has shown us he deserves to win the Tour de France.
Well, he wants to, Phil. He's dreamed about it. He's one of the most consistent Tour de France performers over the last few years. In fact, he's one of the most consistent Grand Tour performers, but he's never got the big win that he's looked for. He's never got the big win that he's promised, and he stretched it out once again to 1 minute and 35 seconds. You know, if they don't organise the chase, they're going to lose huge chunks of time. And if he goes to the summit with 2.5 minutes advantage, he could be leading Cadel Evans by 2 minutes.
Well, these boys, those attacks have absolutely knocked the stuffing out of them just now. They need time to recover, because there's no resting place on this climb. It is a vicious climb. The top riders will climb it in 36, 37 minutes. The rest will take an hour to an hour and a quarter today. There's plenty of Australian flags here. There's even a British flag here. Well, the British riders have had their moment. 4 stage wins by Mark Cavendish. Mark would be the first to tell you he wouldn't win up here. This is now a battle for final honours.
Well, Cadel Evans at the back are pretty much on the defensive. It's AG2R is on the front end. Stefan Schumacher, 38 years of old, is setting the pace ahead of Bernard Cole, rocking his head a bit. But I tell you what, Valverde looks pretty dangerous as well there. Moving up, Valverde's having a quick chat with the team management there, deciding what he needs to do. The 2 Schleck brothers are waiting in the fold to see what they can do. A minute 47, it's going up all of the time.
He's going to hit the 2 minutes. He's got 5 kilometres to do it.
Well, I think he will hit the 2 minutes, and the fact is, Phil, that none of the big heads of state are chasing him. Evans isn't chasing, Menchov isn't chasing, and they're not going to get any help at all from the 2 Schleck brothers, who are just sitting there waiting.
3 miles from the summit, and Sastre is heading for gold.
Yes, he is, and what he's heading for is as much time as he can grasp as possible. It's going up all of the time, almost with every pedal stroke, 1 minute and 51 seconds. I can't believe that Cadel Evans is not coming to the front to keep this in check. It's Stefan Schumacher still moving up into second place on the defensive, playing the role of defender, the policeman in the white jersey. Andy Schleck says, I'm not going to set the pace, I'm just going to sit here and see if we can swing the advantage over to my men now. Looks like Schumacher has lost a little bit of his impetus too, as the control on this group is being left up to Team CSC, and they ain't going to chase because it's their man in front. It's now 1 minute and 53 seconds.
Well, as Sastre ploughs on, 1:53 is the gap, and the crowd is now enormous.
I tell you what, Phil, I've got a funny feeling that there's nobody in that group behind has got the level of energy left to chase this man. He's every pedal stroke extending his lead, 1 minute and 55 seconds. He's going through a wall of crowd. There's orange supporters there for the Dutch. The Spaniards are here for him, and they're cheering him, tapping him on the back. They know this man. They've seen him for many years in the Tour de France because he's always been a steady performer.
Well, now he's shown us to be a very exciting bike rider. 2 minutes is hit, and Sastre has only ever won 1 stage of the Tour de France, and it was in Bonasque in the Pyrenees. He's now having the moment of his life here on the Alp itself, and this group behind, they've got to attack. They've all got to go for it shortly.
They cannot. They've got nothing left, and every time they move, on their wheel is a Schleck brother, whether it be Andy or whether it be Frank. They cover every move. They're not going to get any assistance there from Denny Menchov because he's just happy to be in this group. Cadel Evans is just sitting at the back there on the shoulder of Frank Schleck. 2:04. There's still 4 kilometers to go. I have a funny feeling today Carlos Sastre could be laying down the foundations of victory in the Tour de France this year. He's banked everything on this 1 month of the year.
History has shown us that the man that pulls the yellow jersey on at Alpe d'Huez wins in Paris. He's building that sort of time gap to maintain the tradition of the Tour de France. At 5 kilometers to go, this is the first attack. It looks to me as though it's Valjevets going now.
Efemkin is the one who's moving this time, I think, Phil. There, Cadel Evans had said, right, enough is enough. I'm going to chase you guys down. You can see also Andy Schleck coming across here. He'll come to the wheel of this young man and he'll just sit there and say, if you want to chase my mate, you go for it, because we're looking for the overall lead here this afternoon.
Well, if they've got the energy now, they've got to counter this move, and they've got to up the ante a bit and go again. Because the flurry of action we've had has gone from the impetus of this breakaway, and that little acceleration you see took off a second or so. 1:58, and the return is there, but that's on these two, not on the group Cadel.
Well, you see Andy Schleck just sitting there. He's covering all of the moves. He's playing an incredible defensive role this afternoon. The yellow jersey group are playing the tactics here this afternoon. They're saying, Cadel Evans, you want to win the Tour de France, you assume the responsibility and you set the pace-making on the front end of this group.
It's the only answer right now. Vladimir Efemkin looks over his shoulder and he's realised he's got the gap. Andy Schleck has found the strength. This is the younger of the Schlecks, and he's going to be the future star of the family by the look at it.
Valverde is the man lifting the pace on the front here now. He wants to pull it all back together as well. I have to say, Alejandro Valverde has found his legs here in the Alps this afternoon, and he's pulling himself right up to Efemkin and Andy Schleck.
Well, this is as big a crowd, I think, as we've ever seen. I didn't see where they were all hiding last night when we came up, but they're all there now, enjoying the arrival of the Tour de France at the mecca of this cycling event. And still at 1:53, this counter move is shutting it down. But these two riders really don't affect the yellow jersey. It's still on the shoulders of Sastre.
Yeah, but what's going to happen now, Phil? They've caught them up. Cadel Evans has seen this.
Evans
and he wants
is going.
To keep the end.
He's lifted the pace.
He wants to lift the pace. He really just needs to ride a time trial now, Phil. He's seen that he's got 3.5 kilometres to go to the finish, and he has to ride this final time trial. He has to now ride the time trial like the one he's going to ride on Saturday. He's got to use everything he's got in his body now to reduce that time gap.
This is the ride we're looking for. Cadel Evans, the Australian, has taken control. He knows if he's to win the Tour de France, he must not allow Sastre to get 2 minutes.
He knows that in his mind. I think he fixed before the start of today's stage how much time he could lose on this mountain, and the time gap is stretching out again to over the 2-minute mark. But for Evans, he's got to ride his heart out here at 4 kilometres to go, Phil, to get himself back into a shot at winning the race in the individual time trial at the end, because Carlos Sastre is going to win the stage, but the question will be